Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to the district session for the Board of Directors regular meeting, Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District. We are hereby called to order. Will you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. Okay, we have our Metro Cable announcement. The open session meeting is videotaped for cablecast on Metro Cable 14 with a replay on Sunday, June 16th at 4 p.m. and on Monday, June 17th at 6 p.m. on Channel 14. Our webcast is at www.sacmetrocable.tv. The open session meetings are also available for viewing on the district website at www.metrofire.ca.gov. We now come to the public opportunity to discuss matters of public interest within district jurisdiction, including items on or not on the agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers for this section?
Not this section. All speakers are related to action item number 6.
All right, thank you. Moving on. Chair will entertain a motion for consent.
I'll move the consent.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Director Sailors.
Aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Orzali.
Aye.
Sheets.
Aye.
Wood.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
And Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Our first action item is fiscal year 2018-19 budget amendment, wages and benefits recommendation. And who will be speaking? Okay. CFO Amanda Thomas. Welcome.
Good evening, directors, Chief Harms, Amanda Thomas, Chief Financial Officer for the district. The first item I'll present this evening is a recommendation to amend the fiscal year 2018-19 mid-year budget to add $1.5 million to the general fund budget for wages and benefits. The adopted mid-year budget includes a total of approximately $175 million for wages and benefits expenses and was based on expenses incurred for the first 6 months of the fiscal year and estimated for the remaining 6 months. Due to a variety of factors, actual expenditures in the second half of the fiscal year have outpaced the budget projections for categories including overtime, vacation and sick leave cash outs, retirement, and workers' compensation. Current year revenues are expected to be sufficient to cover the additional recommended budgeted expenditures, and staff recommends an amendment to the budget of $1.5 million, which is approximately 0.9% of the total budgeted wages and benefits expenses, to account for the additional expenditures. I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Are there any questions for CFO Thomas? All right, hearing none and seeing none, Chair will entertain a motion to adopt the resolution, action item number 1.
I make the motion.
I'll second.
All right, first and seconded. Please call the roll.
Director Sailors.
Aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Orzali.
Aye.
Sheets.
Aye.
Wood.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
And Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. On to action item number 2, fiscal year 2019-20 preliminary budget. Again, we turn to our CFO.
Thank you. And before I get started, I think that Chief Harms would like to make a few remarks regarding the preliminary budget for fiscal year 19-20.
President Joan and directors, tonight we bring a preliminary budget to you with a deficit of just over $400,000. And Amanda will explain some of the one-time expenditures that are in this budget. Also in this budget is our budgeted what our expectation would have been with the contract with the firefighters had moved forward. We've decided to leave that in place as our preliminary budget, and as you know, we'll come back later in the year with the final budget, and as we move forward with negotiations, we'll be able to make adjustments to that portion of it for the budget moving forward.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. So I will get started jumping into the presentation here, which is for the preliminary budget for fiscal year 2019-20. So that's the year that will begin July 1st, 2019. Just in terms of background, an initial preliminary budget was presented to the Finance and Audit Committee on May 23rd. And subsequent to that presentation, there were some changes made to the budget that's now being presented to the board for approval. As Chief Harms just alluded to, the budget was adjusted to account for the terms that were included in the tentatively agreed upon MOU. So that reflects wage increases and some of the other components of that agreement, as Chief Harms said. We now know that those terms were not ratified by two of the labor groups. However, at this point, for budgeting purposes, I think those are the best assumptions that we have to go on. So they are included for budgeting purposes in the preliminary budget. And I'll talk more about that as we get into the presentation. Another change was we received IGT funding that will be used in the fiscal year 1920 budget. So if you recall, we basically have a lag in terms of when that funding is received versus when we're using it in the budget so that we know the amount that will be available. So that funding was actually received, and we have an increase of about $1 million over what we thought we would have when the budget was presented to Finance Committee. Additionally, we made reductions in the services and supplies budget, so about $1.3 million in reduction there, and adjustments to the grants fund transfer to account for a transfer that's occurring in 1819, which reduces the amount that would be required in 1920. So that's kind of a summary of the changes between the Finance Committee presentation and what you're seeing tonight. Again, as Chief Harms mentioned, the budget will continue to be refined through our normal processes as we move throughout the year. So we have a final budget that will be coming back to the board in September. We typically do a mid-year budget adjustment in March, and any additional amendments throughout the year as necessary. So, it's called preliminary budget for a reason. It's a budget to get us started for the year, but as we know more, as things change, we'll obviously have the opportunity to reflect that and refinements to the budget. Okay, so an overview. Again, as Chief Harms mentioned, what we're recommending in terms of a general fund budget is a deficit of approximately $400,000. So that would be a use of reserves of about $400,000, but that really results from one-time costs, as I'll describe as we get into the presentation, related to the SCBA purchase that will be occurring in 1920. We do have significant increases in property tax and IGT revenues included in the budget, and I'll talk about those as we get into the presentation. And are also assuming the continuation of the GEMT quality assurance fee, which was a new revenue source for us in 1819, that's resulting in about $2.2 million in additional funding in the budget. As I mentioned, labor cost increases included in the budget are based on assumed wage increases and also increased pension and medical contributions. So overall, we're looking at about $11 million increase in labor costs 1920 compared to 1819. And significant one-time costs are included for SCBA replacement, as I already mentioned. And just overall, in terms of where we expect to end the year, we're projecting a reserve ratio of 12%, which would be about $26 million in general fund reserves at the end of the fiscal year. So this chart is showing us all of the funds of the district for which we're recommending budget appropriations. Obviously, I'll focus most of my presentation on the general fund, but this chart I think is nice because it illustrates the relationships between the general fund and the other funds. So just starting off looking at the general fund, you can see total revenues there with the green circle of about $217 million. Total expenses is just under $220 million. And then we have transfers that are coming in and out from the other funds, and this is what I'm talking about in terms of relationships. So what's circled in blue are the transfers that are going out of the general fund to other funds. So the largest of those is to the Capital Facilities Fund. It's about $6.8 million. And then we have a little less than $100,000 that's going to the Grants Fund, which is the remaining portion needed for the local match on the SCBA grant. So those are the transfers out. Then we have the transfers that are coming in, or the transfer that's coming into the general fund from the IGT fund. So that's $9.2 million, which is coming in from the IGT fund to the general fund. That's reflecting the net funding that was actually received in 18-19 and will be used in 19-20. And that's a significant increase from what we've seen in prior years. I'll talk a little bit about that later. So the net of those transfers in and out is an additional $2 million coming in. So comparing that to the revenues and expenses in the general fund, that's how we're ending up with the deficit of about $400,000, which would be a use of reserves of about $400,000. The only other thing I wanted to mention on this slide, because there really isn't a general fund impact, but it is significant, and I won't be talking about it later in the presentation, is that the third column from the right, the Development Impact Fees Fund, we do have $3.8 million budgeted in that fund in 1920, and that's reflecting the construction of Station 68. So the use of those development impact fees for that fire station. Okay, so moving to look at the general fund and year-to-year changes in the general fund. The top line there, property tax revenues. You can see that we're currently in 18-19 budgeting about $149 million in property tax revenues, expecting in 19-20 for that number to be $157 million. So that's an $8 million or about 5% increase in property tax revenue. Total revenues are going from $208 million to $217 million, so about $9 million. You can see most of that is accounted for by the increase in property tax revenues. And then looking at our total expenditures, going from $208 million to $220 million, about a $12 million increase in expenditures. Transfers in, so this is that IGT transfer that I mentioned. That, as you can see, is increasing about $2.4 million from 18-19 to 19-20. So a significant increase there in IGT revenues. And really what's driving that increase is enhanced federal funding associated with Medi-Cal beneficiaries as a result of the Affordable Care Act. So it's the expansion population, people who are eligible for Medi-Cal because of the Affordable Care Act. There's about a 95% federal match on those as opposed to the normal 50% match, which is a big difference. And what it translates into for IGT funding is that for every dollar that we contribute, for a normal non-ACA beneficiary or anybody that was included in previous years, we would be getting an additional net dollar back, right? So we contribute $1, we get 2 back, so the net is 1. For that 95% match, for every dollar we contribute, we get 17 more back. So it makes a really big difference in terms of the overall net funding of the program. And in fact, our contributions are at a lower level than they've been in the past, but the net funding is at a higher level because of that additional federal match. So that's really what's driving that number up. So getting back to the overall summary here, when you compare that $9.2 million that's coming in IGT to the almost $7 million that's going out to the capital facilities and the grant funds, that's where we have that $2.3 million net transfer in, and then again resulting in about $400,000 deficit in the general fund. Okay. Looking at the revenue history in the general fund, we're projecting our 7th straight year of property tax increases post-recession. So that's that dark blue part of the chart. You can see that line continues to go up at a pretty steady rate. And then the other thing of note here is really the size of the light blue portion of the chart, right, which is everything that's not property taxes. And the increase, from 18-19 to 19-20, there is primarily being driven by that increase in IGT revenue, which we're including in this chart. This is another way of depicting what that looks like. So this is the breakdown of general fund revenue for fiscal year 19-20. You can see that property taxes are accounting for just under 70% of total revenues and transfers in. So this is also including the IGT revenues. That percentage, if you look at fiscal year 8-9, so back in the chart that we were just looking at, was about 80%. So over that 11-year period, that the share of property tax revenues has decreased from 80% to 70% because of these other funding sources that we're getting in, including IGT. You can see that the largest slice of the pie, or the next largest slice of the pie, is charges for services, 24%, and that includes our medic fees. We are projecting about a $500,000 increase in medic fee revenue in 1920. That's primarily related to the fee adjustment that was approved on the consent agenda. That'll be effective July 1st. The yellow slice of the pie there, that is the IGT revenue. So $9.2 million, which, as I mentioned, is a $2.4 million increase. What I think, I would just want to highlight here on this chart is that that's $9.2 million, and now about 4% of our budget that's coming from that revenue source, which, as I've talked to you about before, we really have very little control over. So the fact that it's increasing is a good thing, but it also means that we have now a larger risk exposure to potential changes in that program in the future. So turning to look at expenditures, and this is just the distribution of expenditures in the general fund. So labor costs, about $186 million, a little under 82% of expenditures and transfers out. So this is including the money that's going out to the Capital Facilities Fund and the Grants Fund. Services and supplies, a little under $30 million, about 13%. Our third category of expenses is much smaller: taxes, licenses, debt service, and others. That's accounting for about 2% of general fund spending, and then those transfers out about 3%. So I mentioned the labor budget is $186 million, which is an $11 million increase compared to the 2018-19 mid-year budget. Just to clarify, I know it may be confusing, the item that I presented before this, I have not reflected that adjustment in these comparisons. So this is a comparison to the mid-year budget as it was before that amendment was approved. Changes from the 18-19 mid-year budget include increases in required pension contributions. So that item alone is about $4.3 million of that $11 million increase is just because our pension contribution requirements have increased. The next largest item contributing to that increase are assumed wage increases. So the assumptions are 2.2% on July 1st, 2019, 2.1% on January 1st, 2020. So that accounts for about $3.5 million of the $11 million increase. Increases in OPEB contributions, assumed increases in medical premiums are also accounting for change from 18-19 to 19-20. And then we have additional filled positions. So for the most part, the fact that we have vacancies where we're having savings on salaries and benefits is offset by reductions in overtime costs. But we do have in the 19-20 budget assumptions about larger academy sizes, so that's resulting in some additional cost in 19-20 versus 18-19, and then some vacancies in some inspector and other day positions that we're assuming will be filled in 19-20, whereas that cost was not reflected in the 18-19 mid-year budget. But the next item, reduced callback overtime, as I just stated, for the line positions, when we have the vacancies, we have higher overtime costs in our preliminary budget. When we're assuming those vacancies are filled, we're budgeting for lower overtime costs. So the preliminary budget is reflecting about a $6 million reduction in that overtime, or about a 25% reduction compared to the 18-19 mid-year budget for that reason. Okay, so looking at services and supplies in the general fund, as I mentioned, that budget totals about $30 million, and that's about a $2 million increase compared to the 18-19 budget. The items that are contributing most to that increase are listed here, and interestingly, I think each of these is also on the agenda tonight for your consideration. So the first increase is $1 million for additional contract ambulance units. So currently today, there are 4. The plan effective next fiscal year would be to increase that to 6 units. So accounting for those additional unit hours is resulting in about $1 million of additional cost in the budget. We also have a $600,000 increase for liability and property insurance premiums, which I know will be discussed on the agenda later, and about $900,000 for SCBA supplies. So those would just be the non-capital and non-grant funded items associated with the SCBA replacement that we're budgeting for in services and supplies is about $900,000. And because the SCBA purchase actually impacts multiple funds in different ways, and it can get confusing as I move through the presentation, I thought it might be helpful to kind of give you an overview of where those costs fall in the budget. So looking first at the first column, the general fund, that's what I just mentioned, this about $900,000 for services and supplies. So that's any item with a unit price of less than $5,000 is considered, in this case, a supply and not a capital item and is budgeted for this way. So that's the pure general fund impact. We also have the actual SCBA packs themselves, which are more than $5,000 each and get budgeted as capital outlay in the capital facilities fund. So there's about $800,000 there, and those we're assuming would be financed. So we have debt service associated with that, and that's what's showing up in the expenses there in the middle column. And then, of course, we have the portion that is covered by the grant that we're getting grant funding for, and that's included in the grants fund. That includes both services and supplies and capital, and that's about $2.2 million. So all of that together is about $4 million of cost. And then the revenue is shown down below. As I mentioned, in the capital facilities fund, we have financing proceeds. So we're assuming that we would finance that capital cost with lease financing. That's offsetting most of the costs there. And then in the grants fund, we of course have grant revenue coming in, about $1.8 million. And then we have existing fund balance. So that's money that was transferred from the general fund to the grants fund this year in 18-19, which will be available in 19-20 to help fund that purchase. So their total sources of about $2.9 million. And you can see the net 19-20 general fund budget impact, which includes the services and supplies expense in the general fund, plus required transfers from the general fund to the capital facilities in the grants fund, is a little over $1 million. And that's kind of how it all shakes out across the budget. Thank you for bearing with me. I thought it's also a nice example of how the funds are all related to each other and how we use them and what we use them for. Okay, last category of expenses in the general fund, debt service assessments, contributions. That budget totals $5 million. About $2 million of that is the assessment that gets paid to the county for property tax administration. Another $1.4 million is the assessment that's paid to the state for the GEMT quality assurance fee. And then we have $600,000 of debt service payments in the general fund. That actually wraps up the general fund. So moving on to the capital facilities fund. After the financing proceeds and the use of fund balance, the net funding requirement in that fund is $7 million coming from the general fund, and that's primarily to fund debt service payments. About $500,000 of that $7 million is related to capital purchases that would be made in 19-20. So that total capital outlay, which includes the SCBA capital items that I just talked about, is $7 million. $1.4 million of that is rebudgeted from 18-19. So that means items that we intended to purchase this year, but didn't either get fully purchased or received and paid for. So those will be reflected in the 19-20 budget. And some of the major capital purchases you can see listed here. So 3 Type 1 engines, 2 water tenders, SCBA equipment, and 3 ambulances. Okay, moving on to look at the grants fund. So the grants fund for 19-20 does reflect that assistance to firefighters grant for SCBAs. As you know, it's a regional grant, so it's reflecting expenditures not just for us, but also for partner agencies. So when we see that $4 million in intergovernmental revenue, that is grant revenue and other agency local match revenue that's coming into us. So about $3.5 million of that is grant revenue. And then we have that $89,000 that's coming in from the general fund in 1920, and then about $375,000 that's already in the grants fund as a result of a transfer that's happening in 1819. So those three things combined are funding the about $4.5 million of cost. And then the services and supplies and capital outlay costs are ours. What you see listed in that taxes, licenses, debt service, and others line, that's the cost of the SCBA items for the other agencies. And finally, the last fund I'll talk about is the leased properties fund. So in that fund, we do have an increase in rental income of about $700,000, and that's the result of now having a tenant on the first floor of this building. So we're seeing an improvement, a resumption in rental income in the leased properties fund. We also have a reduction in expenditures year to year, and that again is related to the first floor of this building where there were some significant one-time costs in 1819 that we don't have in 1920, so a reduction there. Overall, about $380,000 more revenue than expenditures in the leased properties fund for 1920. So just to wrap all of this up, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're projecting general fund reserves as of June 30, 2020, $26 million, which is 12% of net budgeted expenditures. Looking beyond fiscal year 1920, we'll need to continue to focus on ensuring alignment in our future cost and revenue growth, and that's something that you hear me talk about pretty consistently. But that is how we ensure financial sustainability, is really making sure that those two things are aligned. And that's particularly true regarding the challenges that we have identified in the 5-year forecast. So pension costs, we've talked about, we're going to continue to see probably get greater than $4 million increase in that item every year during that period of time. This year, no exception to that. Capital replacement and maintenance needs. We talked a lot about SCBA's in 1920, and that's been something we've been talking about for a few years. So it's nice that that will be getting done and that will be behind us. But we have obviously vehicle replacement needs and facility needs, as you've heard through the results of the facility condition assessment. And then finally, reliance on intergovernmental transfer funding. So this increased funding is sort of a double-edged sword. It's great to have more money, but it means that there's more risk now associated with any change or interruption in that funding source. So I think it's something that we really need to keep our eye on and be aware of in terms of how we're planning for the use of that money in the future. And that concludes my presentation. The recommendation is to adopt the preliminary budget for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2020, but I would be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, CFO Thomas. Appreciate it. Questions or comments from my fellow board members?
Madam Chair.
Sir?
Thank you. Just for the benefit of people at home, would you remind us, please, of why the pension costs are going up?
Sure. So the largest factor contributing to the cost going up, the largest component is our payment on the unfunded liability. And the largest factor contributing to that is investment return. So, and I will say twofold there. One, historical investment returns not meeting targets, which created a liability or a shortfall in the funding versus what was required. And two, a reduction in the assumed rate of return going forward, which CalPERS has implemented in a phased-in basis over the last couple of years, and we won't see the full impact of until, I believe, 3 years from now. So it's a combination of those two factors, and that's commonly known as the reduction in the discount rate. So reducing that rate of return is requiring contributions to be increased.
Thank you. And that's got nothing to do with what we're doing. It's a CalPERS issue, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
We have no control over that. That's totally correct. Other board member questions or comments at this time? All right. CFO Thomas, I'd like to say thank you, and I appreciate that we are holding at least 12% and continuing to our goal of a 15% reserve. So that's it's a positive item in the budget. Appreciate that information. All right, Chair will entertain a motion for staff recommendation.
Madam Chair, point of clarification.
Sir.
Do you want a motion
Oh,
on each of these, as we've done in the past? So a motion on A through F? Or would you like it called out?
It wouldn't be a preference of my like. You have corrected me, and I appreciate the information.
Okay.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
that wasn't the intent, it was just clarification,
I
not to
understand.
correct you.
I didn't have my glasses on.
Okay. So with that, I'll make a motion, we adopt Resolution A 1920 prelim budget for General Operating Fund 212A.
I'll second.
First and seconded, please call the roll.
Director Sailors,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali. Sheets.
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
And Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Moving to 2B, Resolution 1920 for Facilities Fund 212D.
I second. She just read the whole thing. Let's just second it and go along with it. What do you think, Gay?
Either way is good now.
Yeah,
We
let's
can
just do it
flip a
that
coin.
way. You read them and we'll second. and-
There you go.
Well, that is efficiency. Thank you, Professor. All right, they're first and seconded. Call the roll.
Director Sailors,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali. Sheets.
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
And Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, 2C Resolution 1920 Prelim Budget, Grants Fund 212G moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, please call the roll.
Director Sailors,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali. Sheets.
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
And Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 2D, Resolution 1920 Prelim Budget, Development Impact Fees, Fund 212I.
Second.
First and seconded, please call the roll.
Director Sailors,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali. Sheets.
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
And Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. 2E, Resolution for 1920 Prelim for the Leased Property Funds, 212L.
Second.
First and seconded, please call the roll.
Director Sailors,
Aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Orzali. Sheets.
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
And Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, and our final one, drum roll, 2F, Resolution 1920 Prelim Budget for IGT Fund 212M.
Second.
First and seconded, please call the roll.
Director Sailors,
Aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Orzali. Sheets.
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
And Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes.
And thank you again, Director Gould, appreciate that. I do. All righty, moving on to item number 3, disclosure of material expenditure, commercial insurance, Special District Risk Management Authority. We have a recommendation to receive presentation and approve staff recommendations. Brad Svenkunsen? That's what I thought I said. Thank you. Welcome, sir. Welcome to the podium.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, Brad Svenningson, USI Insurance. I was hoping I wouldn't be up on the big board during that, but I made it this year. So, okay, your commercial insurance policy, it's with SDRMA. You've been with them for 12 years now. They do a fantastic job handling your claims and doing what they can to deny the claims when it's appropriate. Unfortunately, the claims have kind of continued over the last few years. But just to go over what the policy covers briefly, the policy covers all your buildings and contents that you own, which is $131 million. Covers all your district vehicles for physical damage, and that's $56 million. They provide you $10 million of general liability insurance, including employment practices liability insurance, and also includes $10 million of auto liability insurance. Your premium last year was $640,000, and your premium this year is going to be $1.2 million. And the increase is mainly due to your losses that you've had. Your loss ratio for the last 4 years is 110%, which means SDRMA will pay out more money in claims than they've collected in premiums from Sacramento Fire. And they still need to pay their adjusters and people that work in their office. So in summary, we are going to, in fact, I just met Steve Jordan here tonight, and we're going to be a little more creative for next year and try to find other options that we haven't thought about. But the bottom line is you're still getting a really good deal. You're with a company that's charging you less than the claims you're having, which it's nice of them to do that. But anyway, that's hopefully we can curb the losses this year, and we'll be in a better position next year. And I won't be on that board. You have any questions? I'd be happy to answer anything that.
All right, let's see, I think Director Gould and then Director Ozali.
Go.
On this side.
When you refer to be more creative, correct the, or have fewer claims, what does that entail?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we can look at is the way you handle emergencies, how you leave the station. What, you know, are we following the safety measures that you have in place? Is that, I mean, can we hold people accountable for that and have that conversation? Also, possibly look at a higher retention that you pay. That's a gamble, though. Had you done that this year, you would have lost big time. So I'm just going to try to continue to bring more options to the table. Just hoping that you guys have a good loss year this year. It gives me a little more leverage with the marketplace.
A good last year.
Good evening, directors. Greg Castantini. Let me follow up on that. The fire chiefs asked us to put together a plan as far as what we're going to do internally. And that's going to be extensive, and Brad and Steve Jordan and myself are going to lay out the framework. I've kind of penciled what the framework of that plan is going to look like, and it includes four points. The first one is data collection. Steve and Brad are going to work with our insurance carriers, STMRA, our internal data that we have, look at the data and see where we were 5 years ago when it was about half, and where we've gone from now. We've had 3 major collisions in the last 2 years that have put civilians in the hospital. Those are going to be quite expensive. That's a big part of this. The second part of the framework is messaging to the community. We've got to establish a big-time public service announcement out there. We've also got to maybe re-message some of our engines to tell them to pull over, 911, 300 feet, stuff we used to see. The third part is to look at our system and our stations in regards lighting, striping of our equipment. We have a lot of backing accidents, so there's some internal stuff we can do with our facilities. And the last one is always going to be training with our employees. We need to double our efforts with our training. We've done a lot of training, but we've also have a lot new employees, a lot of people promoted into different ranks. So we've got the framework established. We just need to put together our team and our plan to further that as we go along. Any questions on my part? You'll hear more of this as we progress. Yes, Director Gould?
Thanks, Chief. Thanks for stepping up and saying those kind of things, because I think it's important for the public to understand that an all-risk agency like us doing more and more runs every year is some of that collateral damage that occurs as we continue to see our call volume escalate. And as it escalates, so does our risk. And then I think you can get a driver's license in this state if you're just breathing. There is no quality involved in that. And that puts our men and women at risk. I think very passionately that most of this has nothing to do with the men and women of our agency and their problems. It's mostly the citizens who crash into a Code 3 fire truck that's stopped in the middle. Or better yet, we have a citizen who decides, he and his girlfriend, to take a joyride with $1 million fire truck. Those are the consequences that we have very little control over. And the reality is that people ask, why does your service cost so much? There you go. It's because we live in a community that has a lot of people who don't understand that when we're running code and we're highly trained, that it means you need to follow the rules. and be more attentive than you are instead of texting or whatever else is going on. So I understand we got a lot of training that we do for our men and women, and I think that's really awesome, and it's very high quality. But the reality is we run more calls every year than we ever have, and that puts our men and women at risk, and then it's just naturally, statistically, that you're going to see more risk and more cost. But this is where all of a sudden people start wondering, why does your agency cost so much and it's such an expensive thing? Well, you try doing 100,000 plus experiences every year and have the kind of experiences that we do. And then I'll tell you the other thing that really frustrates, I think, a lot of our colleagues that we don't really get to talk a lot about. That's the frivolous stuff that most of you never see, because it's not really allowed to be seen. But when you hear the details, it's ridiculous, some of the ways that people decide, hey, that's a big red fire truck. I bet you they got lots of money. And then we see things come through here that we have to defend that are absolutely ridiculous, that this even gets past any kind of court or a jury or a judge, and we end up paying the cost for it. So I don't think it's the men and women. And I know you weren't suggesting it is, but I'm here to defend them because I don't think it's them. I think it's the citizens at large that simply don't do their part in reducing the risk by just doing the thing they're supposed to do, and that's get out of the way. We're trying to go save somebody or stop something from burning down or whatever the crisis is. And you pulling to the left and then stopping and putting on your headphones? That's just ridiculous. Let's put the blame where it really belongs, some of those folks. Thanks. I'm better now.
I would add, Director, that the majority of our most expensive accidents are non-preventable on the employee side.
That's right.
Yeah, so thank you. Was there another question?
Anything else from another director?
Yeah, mine was a statement.
All of a sudden, the
I
oxygen's
was
a little
venting,
less.
actually.
There was going to be, and then something happened, so I'm fine. The one thing I would add is the previous speaker mentioned that in our response to emergencies, that's what we do. Everything we do is a response to an emergency. So, thank you.
Good. Any other questions for Brad at all?
Do you have anything, you have any further comments?
No,
Gentlemen, either
I
one?
appreciate your comments. Yeah.
Okay.
Very
No.
frustrated as well, but
No, that's part of an overall, overarching would be additional public safety messages. And that type of education needs to happen over and over, repeatedly, day after day, year after year. And to institute another remake, another surge of that information for public education can be a positive step. All right, anything else? Thank you. All right. Now that I have my glasses on, I will read that we have to receive the presentation and approve staff's recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion, Madam Chair.
First and seconded, please call the roll.
Director Sailors.
Aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Orzali.
Aye.
Sheets. Wood.
Aye.
Clark. Barnes.
Aye.
And Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, and number 4, disclosure of material expenditure, excess workers' compensation insurance, Safety National Casualty Corporation. And hello again, Ms. Brad.
hello, yes, this is your excess workers' comp policy. Better news on this end, the overall rate is going down 5% compared to last year. There really has not been much problem in this area. One of the things the industry, the market, insurance companies are more and more concerned about, especially in California, is fire districts sending teams out to wildfires. They're getting more and more concerned about that. However, they're still keeping all the terms the same, and the rating or the rate went down 5%. So that's all I have
Are there
on
any
that.
questions, sir?
Thank you. I'll be fine this time. Especially because the rate went down. But I think you hit something that I think this body's been kind of interested in, is how do we protect ourselves as an agency? Because I think we're on auto dial when we have these large events. They call Metro, I think we're like at the top. And I'm always concerned that when we do that, and we're glad to do much of that, but that, again, increases our risk to our men and women significantly. And while we've set a base with you in what that exposure will be, is there a way we buy into a federal policy program, or is the Fed covered 100%? Or what do we do to mitigate that additional risk? Because at the end of the day, that could devastate a budget that we just heard about when we start talking about the kind of cost that would be involved in a significant negative, what'd you say, a terrible loss day? Is that could really impact us. And I'm just wondering if when the big red phone happens and we say, yeah, we'll come with 10 engines and 2 helicopters, that's great. But who's buying the insurance for those out-of-area events? And when does that policy take effect so that we don't get devastated by something we had knowing we were just invited to the dance? So can you maybe explain that, or can we get that in a later date, potentially, Madam Chair, that's explained to us?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah,
Do you have
it's
any
my
input on
understanding, you're taking on the responsibility yourself as an agency to, cover those individuals for workers' comp, and there's no, that I'm aware of, federal backing or anything. This is a $3 million retention, so you're gonna send that team of 8 people out there, and for the duration that they're out there, your maximum exposure is $3 million. Not per person, but for the whole group, okay? If you drop that to $2 million, that changes to $2 million per person. They don't want that exposure at a lower retention. They're willing to take it at 3, but they won't go down to 2. So that's kind of where the marketplace is right now, and but that is the big concern. Everyone was all concerned. Well, wildfires, but also fire districts sending out teams. And they want a separate supplemental. How often do you do it? How many people go? That becomes all part of the underwriting. And so fortunately, they were good with what you were doing currently and didn't change the terms of your policy. However, you're right, there's more exposure. So.
Any other
Thank you, Madam
comments?
Chair.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Any? I think that's an excellent idea for staff and the board of directors to pursue in the future. Yeah, excellent.
Well, I mean,
Excellent.
if the state and the feds want us to come, okay. But you can't put that back on the citizens of Sacramento County. If we're going to increase our risk, there has to be somebody willing to throw in for when we go do these other events, because as we've mentioned, we have some caps.
Yeah.
That
It's-
doesn't do
it's
our
a-
men and women any good.
It is very logical, and it does get quite complicated, both at the state and the federal level. So it'll take a little bit of time, but it's worth pursuing. Any other questions for our speaker? All right, Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and for purposes, staff recommends the Board of Directors authorize the payment not to exceed $415,626 to Safety National for excess workers' compensation insurance, for the good of the order, that's all. First and seconded, please call the roll.
Directors Taylors,
Aye.
Gould,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Sheets,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Barnes,
Aye.
and Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, let's go to item number 5, bid award for self-contained breathing apparatus. Mr. Mark Jones, welcome to the podium.
Thank you. Good evening, President Jones, Directors, Chief Harms. My name is Mark Jones, a Logistics and Purchasing Manager for the district. Tonight, staff is seeking your approval to award a contract for SCBA's and related equipment. We conducted a request for bid, RFB 1903, to select a vendor for the purchase of Scott SCBA equipment. As you're aware, award was made by the board on May 2019 to the lowest bidder, MES, for a regional grant purchase of Scott SCBA's. The grant process required staff to bring that particular grant purchase to the board in order to fulfill the guidelines of the grant. Only 328 packs and 177 additional face pieces were funded by the grant, and this only outfitted a portion of the district. We need additional packs and accessories to outfit the remaining district personnel. So the district would like to enter into a contract, 3-year contract, with the option to extend to a 4th and 5th year with MES for SCBA's and related equipment. The initial contract order to support the already awarded grant purchase will be about $1.6 million, which is reflected in the preliminary budget. So, turn my page. So we respectfully recommend that the Board of Directors authorize the district to enter into a 3-year contract with MES to purchase Scott SCBA equipment with the option to extend to a 4th and a 5th year. And I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Jones? All right, Chair will entertain a motion.
Second.
All right, first and seconded. Madam Clerk?
Director Sailors.
Aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Orzali.
Aye.
Sheets.
Aye.
Wood.
Aye.
Clark. Barnes.
Aye.
And Jones.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. All right, item number 6, bid award, RFP 19-04, Advanced Life Support Ambulance Services. We have Deputy Chief Bridge. present
Good
the
evening,
item.
directors.
Madam
Chief
Chair,
Arms.
it's a point of order. I'd like to have the board consider the following. This is an obviously very significant decision that's before us this evening. We haven't seen this many people since, I don't know when. And what I think may help us, because I'm sure we're going to get a ton of information. I've been told that we're going to get even some paperwork tonight that we haven't seen until tonight. What I would propose that this group look at is take this action item and make it a presentation item this evening, so that we can hear all of the conversations, hear all of the input, look at all of the material, and then have it agendized as an action item 2 weeks from now, so that we can then take a vote. Because my concern is, we've got a lot of questions. My phone has been rocking off the hook. And I would like to see us have all the information tonight in presentation, which is pretty typical for us. And then it gives us about 2 weeks to ponder it, to look at it, to have those vendors that have concerns formulate their responses and ideas and ability to make public comment before we make a decision, and then add action item it. We used to do that, and I think we can do that tonight. So my motion is that we continue to hear all of this, but we hear it under a presentation mode, and then we close that off, and that we identify it as an action item for the following time that we meet. That's my motion.
Second that.
Okay, we have a subvention motion on the floor. Well,
No.
you're right, it's not subvention yet. The concern is that the item is to vote on an RFP. That is the item that we have. And I am not sure of precedents for changing or deleting or changing the action item to a presentation item since the RFP has been completed. That is a concern that I have. And I would look to staff to have any input, comment, and then we'll have any other comments from fellow directors as well.
Yes, President Jones, there's a motion on the floor to, which has been seconded, to move this to a presentation item. It's just changing the manner in which it appears on the agenda, removes it from the action item status, which then would prevent you from taking a vote on the item tonight, because it's just a presentation item. If that motion is approved by 5 votes, then that can be done.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you for that information. Are there any other comments or questions from any of my fellow directors? Director Rosali?
What are the implications beyond that? What happens if we do that? How does this impede the process or facilitate the process?
So we've taken the last few months to be able to go through the RFP, the complete process, much like you just voted on for the SCBA's. Had a number of people that assisted us in that. We were able to extend the current contract, which expires on June 30th. We are in a position now to bring a recommendation forward to the board, and then being able to put us on a timeline for continuity of service and being able to move forward with a vote tonight allows us to move forward with the execution of the contract and puts us in a position of July 1st executing that contract. My concern is by extending it puts us in a position of service delivery on July 1st, that if we don't have a vote, then going back again, or if we don't have approval of a contract, going back again then and renegotiating a contract and having a lapse in service for those additional units.
Okay, so my concern is that lapse of service issue. If we move this as Director Gould suggests, there is a potential for a lapse in service to the community. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is there anything that, and perhaps this is a question for John, that could be done that would allow Director Gould's motion to go forward and preclude a lapse in service?
Well, if it goes, if the motion is voted on and approved, it now becomes a presentation item and no action can be taken tonight. So the effect of it would be to basically move the consideration for action on the contract to June 27th. So that's the effect if that motion is approved. Operationally, I would defer to the fire chief on how that would affect. I can confirm that the existing contract ends on June 30th, and the new contract would have to become effective as of July 1, which only gives you a few days to get in place, potentially a new ambulance service if that's what the board votes on, or to take other action if the contract isn't approved.
I think right now we have a plan in place for the action of tonight and for being able to move forward for implementation of whoever as we move forward for service. I am concerned that if we delay that, is that we are now bumping up to July 1st.
Okay.
Okay, I also have a general question for staff and my fellow directors. What is gained by moving this to a presentation item? That's rhetorical, because our RFP process has already been completed. Although it's a different size, so to speak, remember not too long ago we had an issue with janitorial services and it involved an RFP. And this seems very similar in the sense that this is even further along. All the bids have been opened in a public manner, and we have a staff recommendation based upon an RFP that has been completed. My concern is that this would open up another RFP process, and as the chief just said, that took months to go through. And also, it's like everyone's seen everybody's poker cards already. It was a closed bid. Now it's open. So I am very concerned that with all these cards on the table, people who were not chosen have a second chance to come in and underbid the company that was chosen. That's my real concern. Our RFP has already been completed. Are there any other questions,
Madam
comments?
Chair, and just to add to that, as tonight, as we hear presentations, obviously from a lot of people that are here, and we welcome that, is we still have the opportunity, as you mentioned, Director Gould, that you've been peppered, for lack of better terms, of phone calls and fielded phone calls to answer those questions. We're going to hear some concerns tonight, and I think with the opportunities of talking with staff and the leadership of this organization, just from where I sit right now, everything that was done, everything that's going to be presented here tonight, for myself, I think, as President Jones talks about, we delay that, it's an open process, there can be a new bid with different numbers. I think we're all here to receive the information for as long as everybody wants to discuss it tonight. And I think, from my opinion, it's just something, as an action item, we can move forward so there is no disruption in service. That is my concern.
Any other comments? Director Gould?
Madam Chair, let me just follow up then on the motion. I guess my concern is in our history, when we have an item of some significance, it comes to this board as a matter of general technique to have a presentation item where the public has an opportunity to weigh in on all the cards that have been laid out as was described. At that time, they can talk about discrepancies, concerns, whatever it is, and that's the public's right to have access to that. Tonight, my concern is, unless I hear it go otherwise, we're going to hear some testimony from our staff, and then we're going to make a decision. That's what we do as a matter of practice when we have an action item. And that precludes an opportunity from when all of the cards have been laid out, some of which we may be seeing tonight for the first time. It gives the opportunity for those folks to then look at it, digest it, and then formulate a response and come to the dais and share that. We are not doing that in this format. And so that's my concern, is that's the why I'm asking that we consider that delay. Now, this board also has the opportunity to call a special meeting. And I can't think of a better reason than when we're in situations like this. But at the end of the day, we've kind of, I would just think that if there are people in the audience, because it's packed to the gills, and they haven't seen everything, they need to be able to see that, and then they need to be able to process it, and then they need to be able to give them an opportunity to come to this dais and share with us their viewpoints to inform us as the elected officials on those considerations before we make a final vote here. With it being an action item, if we don't change that, we have to make that vote tonight, basically. Up or down, but we still have to make a vote. So that was my only concern in the motion, was to potentially, now, if the chair decides that we're going to hear a bunch of comments from our staff and all of the processes that were taking place, and then we're going to open it up to public comment, which is probably the technique we're going to use since we didn't have any at the beginning of the meeting, that gives them the opportunity to share with them, as long as they've had a reasonable amount of time to process all of the cards that are available. And if they're all available and we're not going to get any new ones, then that's a different story. But if we get anything new, then I think the public has a right to look at that, process it, and then comment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, I do have to disagree with a few of those beginning statements, because it's not just the Board of Directors and the staff. As is normal practice, we have this, we have public comment, and if you've been peppered by a lot of phone calls, as probably most of us have, everybody has been informed about this when the bids went public. When was the bid made public? When were they opened, sir? Does anyone have a date?
April 5th.
April 5th. And what's today's date?
June 13th.
Okay, so we have a significant amount of time for interested parties to do research, reach out, and discuss this. So that's my comment, is that all the public discussion has been available since April 5th. So are there any other comments for the motion by Director Gould? Any other comments to that motion?
Sorry, Madam Chair, just for the point of order on this, there is still that opportunity to readdress that motion at the end of the presentations, at the end of the public comments.
There is, yes, sir, there always is.
Okay. Because otherwise, right now, from my understanding, we'd have to take action based on motion in a second. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So my opinion, I'd like to hear what needs to be presented, and if that's still the opinion of a colleague, then that is an option, I think. So.
For further discussion. Okay. Any other comments on the motion? Hearing none and seeing none. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Director Sailors.
Can we repeat what we're voting on, please?
The motion is to move action item number 6 to a presentation item and remove it from the action item calendar. Has been moved and seconded.
Wait, and move it to a presentation item.
Move it to a presentation item only.
I say aye.
Gould.
Aye.
Orzali.
No.
Sheets.
Aye.
Wood.
No.
Clark.
Aye.
Barnes.
No.
Jones.
No. Doesn't.
It's tied.
No, in the tie, the motion fails. Correct?
Motion fails.
Counsel?
Correct, you
let's
need
get going.
5 to carry.
Yes. Okay.
Failed. Let's move.
All right. So now we return to Deputy Chief Bridge for presentation item number 5.
Okay, good evening, directors. Chief Harms, again, Eric Bridge, Deputy Chief of Operations. And tonight we are proposing to award a 3-year agreement to Medic Ambulance for ALS ambulance service with 2 one-year extensions for years 4 and 5. The implementation date is July 1st. But before I start, I would like to thank those that were involved in this process. Of course, it was a very detailed and lengthy process. I'd like to thank Chief Shannon, Chief Barbie Law, and Captain Brian Benton from EMS Division. I'd also like to thank Mark Jones and Courtney Moore from our Purchasing Division. And also AP Triton, our consultants, and then we also had Dave Berry from the Anaheim Fire and EMS, and Mike Antonucci from San Bernardino County Fire. So they were all instrumental in assisting us with the RFP process, and I wanted to make sure that didn't go unnoticed. A little background to tonight's proposal is we've had an agreement in place with AMR for over 20-plus years, and this has been done through multiple agreement extensions. But to ensure transparency and sound contracting practices, excuse me, staff felt it prudent to post an RFP for ALS ambulance services. So we sought a single contractor to staff 612 ALS units, 7 days a week for 365 days. This comes out to a total of 26,280 hours, unit hours in 1 year, a minimum. So each unit will be staffed with one paramedic and one EMT or two paramedics. So on March 4th, we posted an RFP 19-04, Advanced Life Support Ambulance Services. Staff did an outreach notifying 44 different ambulance providers, the California Ambulance Association, and the American Ambulance Association of the posting. So we received 4 proposals. From Alpha One, American Medical Response, as we know as AMR, Falk, and Medic Ambulance. Staff evaluated the vendors' proposals and qualifications, and all 4 were allowed to proceed to the written evaluation. The written proposals were evaluated on the basis of the respondents' expertise, prior experience on similar projects, demonstrated competence, ability to provide the requested services, adequate staffing, references, cost, and responsiveness to the RFP, and understanding of services to meet the needs and concerns of our district. It was determined that all proposers should be invited to the oral interviews to further distinguish the best provider for the district. Interviews were conducted on April 29th and April 30th by a panel comprised of 4 persons with extensive fire service and EMS experience, 2 of whom are our employees here at Metro, and 2 of who I mentioned earlier from outside fire agencies. After the written and oral interviews, the proposals were numerically ranked. The numeric scoring placed AMR and Medic Ambulance in the first and second positions, with Medic being a close second to AMR. This numeric ranking, unit hour price, and total contract price was delivered to the executive staff for consideration and development of the final recommendation to all of you. After consideration of all the data, and the executive staff determined that Medic Ambulance met all the criteria of the RFP, possesses of extensive experience in the delivery of the services desired by Metro Fire, and demonstrated the ability to meet the service requirements of Metro Fire. On this basis, and on the basis of the unit hour and total contract price data, Medic Ambulance was selected to enter into contract negotiations, resulted in the proposed agreement. The proposed cost of a 3-year agreement with Medic Ambulance is just a little over $9.8 million after the negotiations. There will be 2 one-year extensions for years 4 and 5. A little bit optional one-year extensions, excuse me. There will be 2 optional one-year extensions for years 4 and 5. So just a little bit about Medic Ambulance, and I know they're represented here tonight too. But I would like to just share a little bit with it what we have researched with them. They began in Solano County in 1979 as a family-owned business with strong ties to the community there. Today they operate approximately 50 ambulances a day and have over 300 employees who manage over 33,000 911 calls for service in the Solano County. They also have their own internal education and training department, and we're confident that they will meet the needs of our district. This agreement has been reviewed and approved by legal counsel, and staff recommends the district to award RFP 19-04 Advanced Life Support Ambulance Services to Medic Ambulance. With that, it concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer some questions.
Okay, thank you, Chief Bridge.
Sure.
Are there any questions for Chief Bridge at this time?
I do.
Director Barnes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple questions, if my colleagues will let me do this. Can you just explain to us in the process, why is it important to have other representatives from other agencies to be part of this selection process?
I think it adds that element of transparency is what it does. You have There's some out there that might believe that, if we're going to put it out for an RFP, then you should have some outside agencies that are part of it. Not only just your own internal people, but you should have that. It's a good balance. We do the same when we do promotional exams, when we're doing assessments on our own people. We do ask for that outside perspective to make sure we're not caught up in some tunnel.
Okay, thank you. And just a follow-up question to that is, are the people, the representatives who were on this panel, do they come as representatives of their agencies, and/or are they considered kind of leaders in the industry in this field?
No, they're absolutely considered leaders in the field of this. And they've done these contract prices. They are consultants also with AP Triton as well, and they've done extensive outreach and work for them as well. So this wasn't the first time that they have done this.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes.
I think it was important for us, as we went through those things, was to have people that have done this before and that really knew the market across the state, understood what was happening as far as ambulance service delivery, understand the constraints by the LEMSA and the IMSA, and had negotiated contracts and being able to bring in that expertise. And as much as Chief Bridge operationally runs the district, by having additional folks there gave us a feeling of being able to look at the process, know that we have a good process, and that have outside eyes on it too at the same time.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions from directors?
Not a
Madam?
question, a comment. So my concern is one of our service standards is our service delivery, our service before self. I have worked with AMR in multiple capacities over the last 19 years when I was pre-hospital, in the hospital, and I know the service that they deliver. I know the reputation that they have. I don't know Medic's reputation. I feel very strongly that we are gambling with the citizens that my family lives in the district, that we are not giving them the best service. AMR has proved it over the last 20 years that have partnered with us and has built an exceptional reputation, and I am concerned with not picking the best service when that's our number one service standard, is to deliver that to our constituents and family members.
And I could assure you, if we had felt the same way, our staff had felt anything similar, we would have a different recommendation at this point. But I could assure you, it wasn't an easy decision, I can assure you that. We've had a strong relationship with AMR over the last 20 years. They were here when I started, which is a long time ago. But I can assure you that Medic Ambulance can absolutely deliver the service. We're looking for 6 units to augment our EMS delivery system. We have 24 ambulances on the street, over 37 Metro Fire engine companies on the street. Our service delivery will not change. We will still continue to provide the best service.
I think it's really important when you look at fire-based EMS, and that we are a true believer in fire-based EMS, is that on every call for an emergency, not only do you get an ambulance that responds, but you also get either an engine, a truck, or a heavy rescue that responds also. And the importance of that is the experience level of our senior members who are on those companies. So as they arrive on scene, you have an engine company that'll arrive. The hiring practices have been is that there is only 60 EMTs in the system. And that engine company and the medics that are on there truly are the leaders of that company. And a lot of times what you'll see with our younger medics is that the older medics will stand back. They'll let him gain experience or her gain experience on a call. But what you also see is when you show up and somebody is really sick or injured, is that older experience steps in. Much like our younger members that are on the medics that we have today, or our members that are in the SRP program that are very young, is that we tell our companies that if you look at a patient and you don't feel comfortable with turning that care over, ride in with them. Be there with them during that time. And so when I look at our deployment compared to a system maybe where only is deployed as ambulances, is that we do have what I would call a safety net. And that safety net responds on every single call, either an engine or a truck company with multiple paramedics responding to a call to be able to manage it. And then the relationship is that being able to build a relationship with your medics, whether they're in the district or that they have surge protection that is there. And we have it also where we run a lot of calls where city medics are coming in, Consumnes or Folsom medics are coming into the area. And again, the same thing is always at the end of the day, provide the best patient care for the customer that you're doing. We can work through the rest of it later, but within our system, that umbrella really is key to service delivery.
Okay, thank you. Further questions for Chief Bridge? We'll go Director Sailors and then Director Gould.
Chief, let me turn that on. Chief Bridge, these consultants that you talked about, do they also consult for any of the neighboring departments that we are sharing medics with, or that come into our district, or that our medics go into their district?
Well, they are here this evening. I can't answer that question, but if they'd like to, they'd be happy to come answer that for you.
Kurt Hinke, Principal Founding Partner with AP Triton. The answer to that is yes.
Which departments do you consult with?
We consult currently with Consumnes, Sac Metro, and probably 40 or 50 departments throughout the state of California. That might be low.
But I'm just concerned with our neighboring departments that neighbor.
Yeah, Consumnes,
So Consumnes is the only one,
correct.
not Folsom, not Sac City.
Correct.
Okay. So many of our medics travel into Folsom and they travel into Sac City. That is correct, right?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, that's all for now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Director Gould?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, thank you very much for the information you've provided so far. I just want to make sure that after we're done asking questions, we're going to have some comments and concerns, and then it will come back to this board should we have any clarifying questions. Is that the process?
Yes.
That's what's going to happen? Okay, great.
Correct.
And Chief, if you don't know the answer to these questions, by all means, gather whoever we need to so that I can get that done. So we sent out an RFP, which we're pretty good at. We do that pretty well. Was there a rubric provided for how that would be scored
Yes, there was.
to the vendors?
I believe that is correct. And
Okay.
Yep.
And then there was an essay, a written exam.
Hold on, I'm sorry, I want to get this back. Hold on a second, I'll have the process. It was not a rubric. I want to have them come over here and speak to the exact terminology so I'm not misleading anybody as I pull out the RFP. Thank you, Scott.
Good evening, Scott Clough, Principal Partner with AP Triton. No, there was not a scoring rubric that was sent to them for their initial RFP.
Okay, and why?
So the reason is because my experience, and with most of the RFPs that I've seen, when you set up your scoring, you tend to find that your bids come in based upon what the greatest points are and not necessarily based on the services that they provide. So when you provide the format for what they're going to be evaluated on, then they have to put their best foot forward, not the best foot forward for the best score.
Okay, so you set the weight of each of the elements that they're going to be scored on. So you determine what's most important, correct? By weighting the rubric?
So staff dictates where their focus is.
Right.
And we'll use an example, say focus was on CQI.
Correct.
So if CQI had the largest score and the potential bidder knows that that's the single highest element, then they focus that bid to increase that score, whether it's accurate or not.
Whether it's accurate. Well, I would think that anybody that's looking at a rubric and see that you're going to put weight, the highest amount of weight on CQI, they would focus on ensuring that they answer that particular part of the contract at the best they can, their best foot forward, because you've told them, or staff has said, that's where we put the greatest amount of focus. So I'm concerned that all of the folks, including the potential awardee, never saw what each element was weighted as. So they didn't know where to put their best foot forward, so that's a concern.
So let me address that, Director, if I could.
Sure.
So if we look at some examples of where those have been released, we'll use Alameda County, Santa Clara County, San Diego County.
Right.
So in those RFPs, the single highest weighted components were on price. And so the competitors that submitted those bids submitted bids based on their best and lowest price. Subsequently, Alameda County went broke and had to receive subsidy because it was not a sustainable bid. Santa Clara County found themselves in the same position. They received a bid that was not able to be supported by the revenue. San Diego County, same thing. They focused a bid based on price. The system couldn't support the price that they had provided. So they tailored their bids to reflect the best score they could get based on the weight, although it wasn't realistic.
Even though who sets the weight is really the LEMSA or the county or the agency. They are at fault, not the vendor. The vendor was just reacting to what was weighted.
That's correct.
It falls back on the agency to say, we screwed up by not spreading the weight out. So that's the first thing that I'm concerned with is they didn't receive it in the RFP. Did they receive a rubric in the oral interview process?
No, they did not.
Of how things would be weighted, of how they answered certain questions certain ways, and what each of those questions would be weighted? So if there was one question that was weighted 50% of the potential grade, you would make sure that you had the experts in the room that could answer that? If there wasn't a rubric, then there's no way they would have known that, correct?
That's correct. They were
Okay.
not provided with that.
Okay.
And I have never provided one in any RFP that I've done, and I've done numerous.
But there have been in other areas, you've said, they just ended up not being appropriate because too much weight was put in one area.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's why we don't go down that path.
Okay. Can you tell me, so then you gathered data. I heard somebody say that data was collected and a decision was then made based on the data of the RFP. I'm assuming that RFP, the major focus was cost of delivery.
So I'm not sure what you're referring to as data, when you said there was data collected.
Well, there was some assessment done of each provider's RFP.
Oh, okay.
Proposal.
Correct. So in this process, they came in, they were all found qualified to progress on to the oral interviews.
Qualified at the same level, so everybody had a 1 or a 0.
Yes, so
Okay.
they all met the minimum standards. So
Okay.
they came into the oral interview process. In the oral interview, they were asked to do a presentation. The RFP is divided up into various sections. Each one of the proposers came in and gave their presentation based on each section and how they would address each of those elements. And each of those proposals received a score based upon those elements. And those scores were then tallied at the end of each presentation amongst the evaluators.
All right, hang right there with that tally thing. What was the inter-rater reliability of that tally?
I'm sorry?
Inter-rater reliability of that tally.
Compared to each other?
Well, when we do inter-rater reliability, we look at how consistent is the evaluation, particularly in an oral interview. So if one person in the evaluation scored that candidate a 10, and everybody else scored that candidate a 1, you have very poor inter-rater reliability, and something's been introduced into the process that's biased.
No.
So that's why I'm just asking,
No, I
if you did
understand.
that analysis, what was the rater reliability?
No, I understand. My question was, were you referring to each element or the overall?
Okay.
Okay, so they are on each element after each presentation. They go through each element. They discuss their scores. If there's outliers, they have to discuss as a group as to why there's an outlier and rectify that position. It doesn't mean that a rater has to change their position. It means that if 4 or 3 raters gave a score of 10 and one rater had a score of 1, then there's an element of discussion that has to take place. Doesn't mean that one evaluator has to change their score, but if there's an opportunity to explain why they read it in that particular manner or why they viewed it, they may change their position.
And is there a trigger point? Is there a trigger point in common practice with RFPs that if inter-rater reliability exceeds X, that will be thrown out, that data is tainted or no good? That's common practice when we look at inter-rater reliability. So did that happen here?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And so to answer your question, all of these scores were within 3 points of each other.
So you're suggesting that there was strong inter-rater reliability throughout the process?
Through every element of the RFP.
Excellent. Thank you for that response. The next thing is I don't think, Chief, you're necessarily the one. Chief, you can come back up. What's going to happen to these employees if a decision is made tonight? What is going to happen to the employees who are vested in Sacramento and have been for years? I'm significantly concerned about those men and women. What's going to happen?
No, I know they've had discussions here. I've spoken with Mr. Pearson at Medic Ambulance, and he has assured that he's opened the opportunities up for any of those people that might be looking for opportunities with their company, that option would be available to them as well.
And the option will include some significant plus or additional points because they've invested in this community for years. They know the system. I'm concerned about that. Anytime we change a workforce group and we bring in a new management team or company, what do we do with all those displaced workers? And we've been through this, not in this agency, but in this community several different times. And I'd like to hear in this public forum a commitment that says those folks will receive more points than somebody that's applying from Texas and doesn't have a freaking clue about our area, that they'll get those things so that they can go back to their families tonight without a lot of concern that they're going to be, unemployed. So that's that part. And then oftentimes, and this maybe gets to Mr. Jones, when we set out these RFPs, one of the stipulations is that there be a prevailing wage commitment. And I know that probably bleeds over from construction and those kinds of things, but how does that impact this particular RFP? What happens here to those men and women who have gone and done a lot of this good work, and what are we doing, and what strength or promises do we have that not only will they get hired, but there'll be a prevailing wage that maintains itself in this area? Because you, as my colleague has said, we're taking one of the premier agencies and other agencies that do a good job of compensating their people, and are we going to get that same kind of commitment to protect them? That was a question. I see somebody walking. Can anybody tell me how that's going to work?
So Director Gould, during this process, at the conclusion, when we entered into negotiations, there's two very common things in the ambulance RFP business. One is that you give preference to displaced workers from the ambulance company that was currently providing the service and lost the bid. That is standard throughout the industry. Mr. Pearson and Medic Ambulance sent a letter to, I believe, the district, and they sent it, I believe, to labor, saying that they will give preferential treatment to the existing employees from AMR, assuming they pass a background. They're not in jail, which I doubt they would. They're highly competent employees, and they would give preference to them. It's my understanding also, and Mr. Pearson can speak for himself, but my understanding is at the conclusion, once they are awarded it, he was asked on the labor wages, how the labor wages compared, and if I'm mistaken, he can stand up, but he said he bid it at AMR's current labor rate, as near as he understood it, for their employees. So my understanding is, as I sit here before you tonight, that both of those things were addressed by Medic Ambulance once they were awarded the contract.
Oh. Thank you. Madam Chair, thank you.
Okay. So we've answered those questions about the two questions that were brought up. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments for Chief Bridge? Director Rosali.
Chief, and perhaps this is a question for Chief Harms as well. But in this process, there's a significant, as I understand it, significant savings to the district in this overall cost of operation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Can we encapsulate where that savings comes from?
So we pay currently, our contract that we have proposed ahead, that's being recommended for board approval is over the 26,280 hours that's bid on a price. The price that we have negotiated with Medic has been at $121.60 an hour. So when you multiply that over the 26,280 hours, you come up with your price for that year. Mm-hmm. And I have that in that staff report. So when compared though, but if we go back to the proposals first, so we compare apples to apples, we were talking about a unit hour price that was bid by Medic Ambulance at $134 a unit hour. The bid price from AMR came in at $168 a unit hour. That's $34 a unit hour more, times 26,280 gets you to a cost of about $1.3 million more that we would be spending on that same service.
Thank you.
Okay,
And that's 1.3 million per year.
per year, correct.
Director Sheets?
I would just say, though, to that, they are the pinnacle of a private ambulance, so they pay the wages to have and retain the best medics, just like Kaiser pays the best wages and they have tens. At what point do we make a decision about finances when it's lives that we're saving? That would be I understand that the fire chief has a business to run, but at one of our constituents or my family member's life because of an inexperienced medic that doesn't know this area, that might increase the response time, or having the medic for Sac Metro have to jump in the medic unit of medic because they don't have that relationship. They don't have built a trust. So our suppression medics have to go and assist a paramedic on a medic ambulance because they either don't trust or don't have that sick or not sick experience. And being able to recognize that. That's where I have a hard time thinking that we've made this financial decision or this decision based on finances, because they didn't score the highest and they weren't the lowest bidder either. So if it's strictly about finances, why didn't we go with the lowest bidder?
Okay. So I can assure you, and I understand the strong attachment with AMRs. We've been with them for over 20 years, and they provide a good service. I am confident that Medic Ambulance will come in and provide the same level of service. I say this too because I've been through a contract change in my previous years when I worked in San Diego when the contract went from Hartson's to American Ambulance out of Fresno. So the same concerns happen there, but over the time, it turns out that hey, we have licensed paramedics that go through the same testing process are being able to go through, and they squeeze out and they work in the field and do the business like AMR does it, like Hartson's did it. That's a licensed paramedic will be working. Are some more experienced than others? I can assure you today that Metro Fire has some paramedics that don't have a lot of experience. But I can assure you, though, they're also working in conjunction with about 5 other paramedics on that same medical aid call that have a lot of experience. The same thing will happen here with Medic Ambulance. So they may not have the experience level, some of them, but some of them will. Some of them may be extremely experienced and seasoned. Don't know, but I have that confidence. If I didn't have the confidence, I wouldn't stand here before making this recommendation. So I can assure you, though, when we're making this recommendation, is cost a part of it? Absolutely it is. But we're also considering, when we look at the scores between Medic Ambulance and AMR, we're talking 3-point differences at the most between these categories. So I don't have any reservations in having Medic Ambulance provide this service here. I find it difficult, I'll be honest with you. I like AMR. I have nothing to say negative about AMR, not at one. They've been a great partner. But we do have a responsibility here also to be responsible fiscally. And when we're talking about $1.3 million, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of service delivery as well. So there is some ties directly with service delivery and cost. I can assure you we've thought about it.
I have a quick item question. What is our unit rate yesterday that we pay for AMR?
And I think it varies because our current agreement with them now is based off a Tier 1, 2, and a Tier 3 type response, depending on the number of transports that AMR provides. So I couldn't answer that exactly right now, but I'm sure maybe I could check with our finance and see.
I am sorry to drop that on you.
Yeah.
A Tier 3, it's based on transports. I'm sorry.
Please come and
I think it's based,
welcome Chief Shannon
thank
to
you.
the podium.
It's based on transports. There's a tiered system. As the tiers go up from 1, 2, and 3, the cost goes up. I believe the highest cost is at Tier 3 is $131 and maybe some change, an hour.
Okay, so we're talking about, currently, we're paying $131 to AMR for their highest at the highest
For the
level.
contract that we signed in 2016.
In 2016, yes. That doesn't expire until June 30th.
Correct.
And so that was 131
I think
plus
it's
change?
131 and 1 cent, I
Well,
believe.
let's call it 132.
Okay.
My point is that their bid came in at 168. So that is a
Correct.
bit, that is a concern that I have. Thank you, Chief. Are there any other questions for staff present at the podium? If not, we can move to public comment. Do you have the speaker cards, Madam Clerk? Thank you. All right. Yeah, no, step through. Thank you. We'll put them in order. All right, thank you. We'll move to our speakers. And apologies in advance if I mispronounce any of the names. We have Anna Saricchia at the podium. And after that person, we have Norm Anderson. And third up, Roderick Huerta Moore. Just so folks have a heads up to come to the podium. Welcome. In advance, it's a 3-minute timer. Please state your name for the record, and we're all ears to listen to your comments. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Anna Saricchia. Board members, I want to thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for your time. Thank you, Chief. I'm here tonight to tell you that I am one of your current district medics. I've been in your district for 4 years and with AMR for 7. Tonight, I want to touch a little bit on the logistic concerns I have about bringing medic ambulance in. I'm going to start with some numbers. 50, 54, 105, 106, 103, 42, and 41. Anyone currently in the field knows that this is the post up Watt Avenue. All AMR district crews can tell you that 45 is in Galt. The Echo 6 gate is the entrance to Terminal B at the airport. Folsom is 35. 111 is Rio Linda, and the difference between River Left and River Right. There are over 100 posts, this you'll learn, and you have to know the difference between their Alpha and Bravo channels as well. Learning the nuances of the districts comes with time, training, and a strong team to back you, all of which AMR provides. Medic Ambulance does not have the infrastructure or to even train their trainees within Sacramento County. I recently asked one of their employees if they learned the MDT yet, and they replied, "What's that?" I find it hard to believe that Medic will be able to live up to their contract, given that they stated that their employees will have 1 year of 911 experience before running in the district. An overwhelming majority of their newly hired medics were just accredited in Sacramento County on June 7th. And it is questionable to think if any of their EMTs have ever even driven Code 3. Will they know how to navigate Sacramento's traffic with a critical patient? Will they be able to respond to a call without getting lost or in an accident themselves? Your engines will be running with grossly negligent crews, putting the general public at risk. And Chief, to address your concerns, you were saying that you can just take a medic out of service on your engine and put them with the ambulance. Well, now that you're risking your fire protection because you have an engine out of service. I have a signed copy of all of the current AMR full-time district employees saying that they would never work for medic ambulance given their circumstances as far as their working conditions. Even if offered a position, we would never go there. It's not adequate and would not provide service that suits us. I would not wear those patches willingly. Metro's field crews have stated to their that their EMS division was left out of this RFP process, leaving them unaware that a private consulting firm recommended medic ambulance for the bid. AP Triton endorsed medic despite AMR's bid earning the highest grade in the ranking process. I stand behind that grade tonight, knowing that we did put in the best bid, we do provide the best medical care and transport, and that we provide the best service to the citizens of Sacramento County. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Next up is Norm Anderson.
Good evening. I want to acknowledge the board's tough decision to select the right fit provider of EMS services for the district. Just a few thoughts regarding the decision. Contractors bid low, hoping to receive the contract. Then when awarded, their change requests exponentially increase the cost. Also, do you have an exit or rebid process in place if not the right fit contractor is selected and or not performing to Metro's or the general public's satisfaction at any time during the contract? And lastly, among financial and business people, a popular phrase is, "You get what you pay for." Thank you for your time and consideration in the selection of your future EMS provider. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up, we have Roderick Huerta Moore, followed by Darren Leike. Lechty? Okay, Darren will be after Roderick, and we have Carl Padroni after that. Welcome to the podium.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, directors, I'm Roderick Huerta Moore. I work for AMR, and I also live in the district. I've been a EMT for about 20 years, been with AMR for 10, and also worked in various hospitals in Sacramento. So I've worked with Sac Metro Fire for the past 10 years. And some of the newly promoted captains, I've worked with them when they had just started off as medics, so we got pretty good relationships. But I just want to say that working with Metro, it's more like a family with me and more like a marriage bond. We all hang out together. We run calls together. My unit, I'm on the District 804, so we post in 108's area. And it's not just running calls for me, it's family time. We go to the station, we hang out at the stations with the crews, we watch TV together when we're not running calls. So it's more like a family. And we saw the scoring that AMR ranked #1 position, and in that factoring was cost. So we're talking about putting the $38 difference between us and the medic. That was considered when we got ranked by Metro's people. They ranked AMR #1, including the cost. So we can't say that cost is a factor when that was already part of the scoring. So we need to take that into consideration when you make your vote tonight, that when they scored AMR #1, that cost was a factor in that. Also, I want to also bring up the fact that when you take this into consideration, like some of you guys already brought to the attention, would you want your family to be at jeopardy? I don't want to say anything bad about the other companies, any of the other companies, because I'm friends with all of those, but they don't have the experience that AMR has had for the last 25 years running with you guys. We have the camaraderie that if we cancel an engine that's en route and say that, hey, we got it, your patient's stable, we'll take them, that they know they trust us. They know that, okay, we can go ahead and cancel and go back in service so that we can be available for the next call, because they've ran with us for the last 25 years and they know what kind of care we provide for the citizens of the district. Also, I want to say that what I want to say is it's hard to think that maybe we would lose it, because every time Metro's called AMR, AMR's already said yes. We need a surge protection, AMR said yes. If you had a line of duty death, AMR said yes. Anytime you guys called us, we've already said yes. So I want to say to you guys tonight is don't say no to AMR. Say yes to AMR instead of one of these other providers, because we've always been here for you guys. At the very least, table it, let us stay around for another 6 months while you guys find another company. The rumor on the streets from the guys that I hang out with that are your suppression guys, a lot of the suppression guys are upset about the fact that maybe we're leaving. They said that the company that was selected, AP Triton, didn't like AMR Assistant Chief Hinky. I guess they said that he is a part of the board and he didn't really like AMR, so he voted against us.
Okay, let's please wrap it up, please, sir.
Yeah, so I'm just asking that maybe you can consider not voting tonight, maybe reconsider it.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Darren. I'll have you pronounce your last name, sir. I apologize for not doing it correctly.
Wouldn't be the first time. So thank you for having me. My name is Darren Lichty. I am a paramedic with American Medical Response. I've been in EMS for about 19 years. But I'm speaking to you tonight from a multitude of positions. First and foremost, I'm a resident in Fair Oaks. And I'm not going anywhere, so I'm going to be here for a while. And the concern I have is bringing in a company with such a horrible industry reputation about the way that they treat their employees and the way that they respond to their calls. I, of course, am educated in this, and in that my other position that I'm representing tonight is that I am the chapter president of our local union, UEMSW 4911. And so I have some knowledge about the way that they interact with our union employees in their Solano district. And it's frankly, it's poor. It's very poor. Up to this point in the year, we've filed approximately 15 to 20 unfair labor practice charges against them. Currently with AMR, there's 1 or 2. Some of them have been dealt with, but most are outstanding. And that's very concerning because those employees who are being treated poorly by their employer are now going to be responding to my emergency. I have 2 daughters. Heaven forbid anything were to happen to them, but I wouldn't want that type of an employee running to my call. I have some concerns about the RFP process, but a lot of them have already been covered. Transparency, I work for AMR, so I know that there's been no meeting to discuss concerns about the service that we've provided. There's no grading sheet, as Mr. Gould discussed. I'm concerned that the consultant firm is run by former firefighters, and that they may have their own concerns about the fire department and their employees as a primary versus a concern for the constituents, people like me. I'm definitely concerned now that I found out the grading process and I found out that AMR was ranked number 1 with all of the concerns in place: expertise, prior experience, competence, ability to provide services, staffing, cost, and an understanding of what Metro Fire wants with their contract. All of those things being, however they were weighted, but all of those things being present, and AMR was still chosen number 1.
Darren, would you please wrap up your 3 minutes?
Absolutely. So just to reiterate a little bit about what Anna also covered, none of our employees are going to be working for them. You will get none of the experience that we carry. And their pay, as you mentioned earlier, is not going to be equal. And I can guarantee that because what they're offering is between $18 and $22 an hour. What our current beginning rates are EMTs at $21 an hour and medics at $27. Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you. All right, next up, we have Carl Padroni, and after Carl, we have James Pearson.
Good evening, Directors. Carl Padroni, Regional Director for American Medical Response. If I may, before my time starts, answer a couple of your questions, Madam Chair, particularly on the our current rate that we bid versus the bid rate versus the current rate. You had a question about that.
Here for information.
Yeah, so just information. When we entered this program back in 2016, we entered this as a pilot, and then we did an extension as that pilot to accommodate this potential bid. So we held those costs back from 2016 while we were, frankly, learning this model. This is a relatively new model, it's a unit-hour model. So over those 2-year period, we've learned what our cost structure really needs to be, thus the current bid price. So we've been running at a loss for a bit, which we knew would be we would bid accordingly going forward. So that's the delta there. And Darren just also addressed the pay rate difference. You know, I can tell you their starting pay that they posted is 13% below our starting pay as it is across the board. And if our medics were to leave that, as you heard, 4, 5, 6 years experience, it's up to a 20 to 25% reduction in pay if they were to move. But we've guaranteed them all homes with AMR to stay here. So as you've already heard from them, they're not going to go anywhere. So, and now if I may, my prepared statement. Okay, thank you. I've had the opportunity to be part of this region in this position over the last 25 years that we've been serving this district in various positions at AMR. We've always had a great collaborative partnership. AMR has made amendments to our contract whenever the district requested it. These amendments have varied from changing deployment models several times to moving from a traditional fee-for-service model, where this district carried no risk or financial burden, to the current model of charging for unit hours that this district's request, that's put forth in this RFP. I believe AMR has demonstrated that we are a strong partner with Metro Fire by leveraging the fact that we're locally managed and nationally supported. We have shared our knowledge of EMS models throughout the country with the district over the years, everything from alternative deployment models to our community paramedic, nurse navigator, telehealth programs, just to name a few. We have shared white papers on equipment evaluations. In 2014 led the way during the Ebola challenges, where we gave them access to our medical command physicians and sharing our protocols written in conjunction with the CDC. As this board has mentioned in many meetings, as a district the size of Metro Fire, you send resources to assist others more often than they're able to reciprocate. AMR is uniquely positioned to continue as a true partner with AMR and be able to reciprocate in that partnership. I believe the evaluation process and review panel also recognize this, consequently ranking AMR as the first place bidder. The final scoring pursuant to the bid specifications, well, we don't know for sure, as the rubric was not disclosed, as we've talked about, included evaluation of those scores in a variety of categories such as operations, deployment, and finally, did include pricing and how it was weighted, obviously unclear. When all factors were evaluated again, including cost, AMR evaluated was the first place bidder. With that said, I'd like to express my concerns that the staff recommendation move forward with awarding this RFP 1904 to the second place bidder when the evaluation process outlined in the bid placed AMR as the highest bidder, yet there was no attempt to negotiate with the winning bidder. As evidenced by the tentative agreement before you this evening, staff was willing to negotiate material changes, including the bid price with the second highest bidder. I believe AMR should have been afforded that same opportunity as the highest ranked bidder. It also prohibited us from sharing some of the cost savings we had offered to the district for purchasing on our purchasing agreement. Being as large as we are, that would have been cash back to the district, could have been part of the things, part of that negotiation, which we wrote in our bid, was never vet through. The path this process has taken has placed unnecessary stress on our tenured workforce that has served Metro Fire faithfully all these years. I've had the opportunity to listen to the board comment often on how hard it is to watch years of experience leave the department with retirement. If that's truly the sentiment of this board, how could you move forward with proposed staff recommendation to approve a second ranking bidder and dismiss combined centuries of experience, literally centuries, with our employees in your district, only to be replaced with all new employees at the best minimal experience? At best minimal experience. And I'll wrap up quickly, my apologies.
Okay, no, it's fine. We're going to give professional courtesy, so.
Thank you. With all the factors in consideration, combined with AMR being the ranking in first place, why would Metro Fire be willing to place this 25-year partnership at risk? While I believe the staff at Metro Fire to be some of the best in the industry, sometimes the best still make a wrong choice. I believe this recommendation is one of those choices. This evening, I humbly request that this board set aside the current staff recommendation and move forward with the highest ranked bidder, AMR. We stand ready to meet at staff's earliest convenience, and we have all the resources currently in place to implement July 1st as contemplated in the bid. I'm happy to answer any questions.
No, thank you, sir. There won't be questions at this time. Thank you. Next up, we have James Pearson. Welcome, James.
Members of the board, good evening. Thank you very much for your time. James Pearson, President and CEO of Medic Ambulance. I want to first say, because this isn't a new process for us. In Metro it is. This is emotional. I respect that. I respect what the employees have to say. I don't agree with it. They have every right to their thoughts. I can tell you we have 320 outstanding employees in Solano County. Today we just got a 5-year extension. There was an open process before that where our union did attend. Those statements, 15 NLRBs, which is not an accurate statement at all, was not brought up. We had a 7-year labor agreement that takes us to 2021 in Solano County with the same union that represents this workforce. Like I said, I respect the opinion, I just don't agree with it. Medic Ambulance is one of 31 ambulances in the world to hold accreditations by the Commission on the Accreditation of Ambulance Services and the International Academies of Emergency Dispatch. I can assure you we are a quality company. We just celebrated our 40th year on June 1st. Yes, Solano County was where we were founded, right? But I was born and raised in Sacramento. My mom, who will talk as well, our CEO, still resides in Sacramento. Many of our employees, we bought Cordova Ambulance in 1996 and have been operating in Sacramento County. Yes, change is hard. I can respect that, and I respect the emotions. I really do. It's very tough. But I can tell you that we are a quality organization, right? Our employees are fantastic. They're great. We don't make those accreditations without them. We operate at a 99% compliance in Solano County, a thing that people said could not be done in our last contract against AMR in 2009 and in 1999, right? Said the same things. Can't do it. Medic doesn't know how to do it. They'll never be able to do it. We've done it. And we just got 5 more years to do it too. So I don't want to mudsling. It's not an our thing. It's not what we're about. This is very emotional. It's a charge. We just went through it in Solano too, and it's not fun, right? I don't envy the employees going through this. We see it around. It's going on right now in Alameda. It's not fun. So, but I can assure you that we are a quality organization that trains at the highest levels. No matter what people say, that is inaccurate statements. The staff that we've talked to through the Metro process has been fantastic, and I know, right, and if you can talk to any city council member, board of supervisor in Solano County that deals with us on a 911 contract, not once have they said that Medic Ambulance did not deliver. Not once. At the highest levels. My family lives in Sacramento County. My friends live in Sacramento County in this district, right? We put our money where our mouth is, and your constituents are our family members too. We aren't just some corporate company saying, oh, we're going to come in. And AMR, these employees live here, so it's not an AMR corporate. I'm just telling you, we know Sacramento. We're not just coming in because we want to bid, oh, we'll make it work. We know the region, okay? So thank you very much, though. I do appreciate the time, and I don't want to take too much more of it, but thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pearson. Next up, we have Helen Pearson. And after Helen Pearson, we have Jacob Mendenhall.
Good evening. As you stated, I'm Helen Pearson. I'm the CEO of Medic Ambulance Service. We are a family business. In 1979, it was my parents and my brother Rudy that started Medic Ambulance in Solano County, and then my sister Marisa was in it, and then I came in 1988. I've been in the business for 31 years. My forte is in banking. I worked at Bank of America and U.S. Bank as a bank manager. Coming into the EMS realm has been quite an interesting journey. Quite an interesting journey. And I love it. I didn't think I was going to handle it. I was only going to work for the family a little bit. I was going to go back to banking because I worked there for 15 years. And like I said, I'm celebrating my 30th anniversary. Once you get a taste of it, you can't let go. So without trying to repeat everything that Jimmy said, but I want to reiterate, I'm born and raised in Sacramento. I'm 63 years old. I know Sacramento. My crews know Sacramento. Medic Ambulance, by the way, has been in Sacramento since 1996. That hasn't been mentioned, so let me mention that. We started on Folsom Boulevard in Rancho Cordova. And now we are on Lexington Street, and we just purchased a building 3 months ago back on Folsom Boulevard. And we're renovating it and remodeling it, and we're very anxious to move in. A quarter of it will be moved in on the 1st of July. We're very excited about it. So Medic Ambulances, we know where the areas are. And I want to stress, because Director Sheets, I'm with you. Family is very important. And I want to stress, and I want to be able to tell you, I have family that lives in the metro area. When you go to church and you go to the grocery store and you see these people, we belong to the Rotary. I mean, come on. You're absolutely right. You have a commitment. And Medic Ambulance expects to proceed with that commitment to Metro. And I'm not going to lie to you. Here's the deal. You have no idea how my knees are shaking right now. And I'm dying, because as an Italian, I cry at United Way commercials. I'm just telling you, I'm very emotional. And I just want you to know, you have no idea how exciting it is to get Sacramento Metro and being able to talk with these fine people and going through the RFP process. And AMR is come on, it's AMR. And we have had the AMR RFP with Medic Ambulance. Like Jimmy said, we won in year 2000, and we won again in 2010 in Solano County. We know the process, so there's a lot of emotional here, and I appreciate it. You don't take it personal. But I just want to make sure that you know that we are not the cheapest company. I don't want to hear that. Medic Ambulance is reputable. We did not come in cheap. You will get what you paid for, and it's going to be darn good. And the fact that Medic Ambulance has received many awards, the CAS accreditation, and for our dispatch, and our employees have received. We've just won for the 3rd year in a row awards from the California Ambulance Association. So that's my ding, and I thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Person. Okay, Jacob Mendenhall, followed by Ryan Sack, and then Shelley Heerdahl.
Hello, my name is Jacob Mendenhall. I'm a paramedic supervisor with Medic Ambulance. I'm standing here with 10 years of experience, all within Sacramento County. I live in Rancho Cordova, and essentially you're concerned about your family having had called us, let's say. I'm telling you right here in front of everybody, I've called our own company to respond to my own family. That's how much I trust everyone in that uniform. Medic is a family-owned company. I don't see them as owners. I don't see them as coworkers. I see them as extensions of my own family. So I would just like to say I would trust any person standing right there with my own life. So, perfect. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. Just as checking in with my fellow board members, we have 4 other speakers registered now. Shall we go ahead and hear all 4 and then take a break?
Yep.
Everyone all right with that?
Yep.
Okay. Ryan Sack. Ryan Sack, welcome to the podium.
Hello, I'm Ryan Sack. I worked at Medic Ambulance for numerous years. I've responded to calls in both Sacramento and Solano County, being a medic in both. And I want to start by talking about the type of family that I've gotten since I've come into Medic Ambulance. You know, some of AMR people have come over and said that they don't treat their employees well. I completely disagree with that. I have this one example of one night I got off shift real late and I worked early the next morning, only had a few hours between my shift. I went and stayed at one of our outlying station houses, ate some Chinese food, and ended up having a severe allergic reaction where my airway was closing up. And I had to go to the medic that was at the house on duty, and he ended up transporting me in, and I never ended up seeing a bill for it. You know, months went by, you know, I never saw a bill for it. The family completely took care of it, never mentioned it, never even brought it up. And I was just a regular employee. And that's the type of family commitment that they have to their regular employees. I have 2 other employees of ours. They ran back-to-back pediatric cardiac arrest one day and then the next day. And they both told Jimmy that they were doing okay. And Jimmy said, no, I'm giving you the rest of today off and the rest of tomorrow off, paid leave. And those people, that's the type of people that we're bringing into this community, is the type of family that is small enough and cares enough about their own employees that they take care of them, and they take care of them on an emotional and a mental and a physical level. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next up, we have Shelley Heerdahl. And then after Shelley, Mark Mendenhall and Christine Bayer. Welcome.
Good evening, all. My name is Shelby Hindle. I am with Medic Ambulance. I have been with Medic Ambulance for 5 years as an EMT. I also reside in Fair Oaks within District 5 as well, and I can confidently say that Medic Ambulance is a wonderful and competent company to take care of your family members. I would trust Medic Ambulance to take care of my mother who has multiple sclerosis within a heartbeat. I've trusted them with every single patient that I've come in contact with and that they have run on. I take great pride in the company that I work for. I take pride wearing this patch on my sleeve, going into work every day, serving the community members of both Sacramento County and Solano County. Medic Ambulance has always said yes whenever the strike teams for the fire seasons and with San Francisco that we recently went on. Medic Ambulance has the manpower to stand up and do what is right for their employees and take the best care of their company contents. I would not be with Medic Ambulance for as long as I have been if I did not think that they provided excellent care, if they mistreated us or anything like that. They take great care of our patients, they take great care of their employees, and I fully agree that they will continue that great care and take more excellent care of Sacramento County too. They will hold it in great pride within themselves being a family company. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Shelby Hirdop. Next up, Mark Mendenhall.
Good evening, Directors, Chief. Thank you for having us. I was born and raised in Sacramento. I've been in EMS for over 18 years at this point in my life. I've had the opportunity in those 18 years to work for different agencies, both in Sacramento and out of county, as far as San Luis Obispo, and then came home shortly thereafter. In working with those other agencies, I gained a lot of great experience. I have nothing bad to say about others. But what I do have to talk about is what Medic has provided. What I'm often asked when I see people in the field, what do you like about Medic? What stands out about Medic? Family owned and operated, right? They care. They look at their employees as an extension of the family. They're extremely involved. They've been in Solano 911 since 1979. That's 40 years of experience. So when we talk about experience, we have it. Sacramento since 1996. Talk about experience in Sacramento, we have it. I'm 100% confident in Medic Ambulance's ability to do this job. Coming over to Medic, another thing that stood out extremely, I was grateful for, is they invest in not only their management, but they invest in their management, their field staff. They want it to trickle down. I've had the opportunity to go all over the United States on behalf of Medic Ambulance, making sure that we know what's new, what's next in the industry, make sure we're on the cutting edge, right? My family lives in Sacramento County. My family lives in Metro District. When I say my family, not just my wife and my children, my mother, my father, literally my brother, my entire family lives within this district. I would not be willing to work for this company that is biting for this contract if I did not believe in their ability to effectively meet the needs of this contract. Something that Medic says, and it's our mission statement, and I believe it, and I will leave with this, is if you give the best tools to the best people, they will do the best job possible. And I am confident that we will do the best job possible in conjunction with Metro Fire. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mendenhall. All right, our last speaker is Christine Bayer.
Thank you. It's Kristen Bayer.
Sorry,
That's
thank
okay.
you.
It was closer than some of the others, so you're good. I live in.
Blame it on handwriting.
I live in District 7, I guess, and so that's very well represented this evening, I see. No. So when everybody says that they treat their employees poorly, I've been there 3 years. I was told, our whole class was told by instructors and stuff, don't go work for there. Don't work there, right? They treat their employees poorly. Not the case. I've been treated very well the whole time I've been there. And people who have bad things to say about how they've been treated are the people who weren't able to live up to the very, very high expectations that Medic sets for their employees, for their standards of service. And those are the types of people who have bad things to say. Everybody else who's right there with them, providing that level of service, has great things to say. So I'll just leave you with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. We have received a few more speakers. However, for full attention to be given to them, we are going to take a 10-minute recess, starting now.
Starting now. Clock.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting back to order after our short recess. We are taking comments from the public, and at this time, we have a couple more speakers. I would like to welcome to the podium Jeff Meisner. Thank you, Jeff Meisner, and then after Mr. Meisner will be Mr. Tom Argel.
Welcome. I guess you should welcome me. Hi, my name is Jeff Meisner. I'm a labor representative with United EMS Workers. I am the paid staff for the EMS union that represents the folks here at AMR, and I am also the paid staff partially that represents the folks at Medic Ambulance. So if anybody is in the middle, it is clearly me. I represent the finest EMS workers in Sacramento in my folks here in AMR. And I represent the finest EMS workers in Solano County over at Medic Ambulance. I am here today in this peculiar position and having to speak to who do I want in this RFP. I feel partially responsible for Carl Petroni's bid because we just entered into a new collective bargaining agreement with AMR, and I feel responsible for his increased rates that he had to give to you because I was with the workforce when we negotiate our contract with the AMR folks. We are in a collective bargaining agreement with 17 counties in AMR in all Northern California into one collective bargaining agreement. That includes the Sac-Yolo-Placer folks and the folks here in the Sac that represent the district. They have different wages and different benefits within this one agreement, but it is one agreement with all AMR workers in Northern California. We just did negotiate this contract with them with significant cost increases or raises to our folks, maintained the good health benefits. But it is more than just about wages when we talk about being a labor union. It's about a cooperative relationship with management. I got into EMS in 1992. I live up in Redding and worked for AMR's predecessor company. Went to work for them and became a paramedic. Carl Petroni at one point of time was my boss many years ago. I became the chief shop steward, became his adversary at times when it comes there. But over the years, I have built a working relationship. What do I bring? We have labor management meetings on a regular basis. We have health and safety committee meetings where we have this collaborative relationship between the union and the company to where we can work through issues and we work through all of the things that go through. I have this fabulous relationship, system status management committee meetings. There are several of these meetings. So right now we do not represent the members at Medic Ambulance, the company of Medic here in Sacramento. They are not my membership. So I clearly am in support of the workers here in Sacramento from AMR because they're the people that I represent. I don't know that there's any interest that we will ever represent the Medic Ambulance employees here in Sacramento. So I just wanted to let you know why I support them. I do support my workers in Solano County because I'm not the direct representative, but I have done some work there. But I clearly support my coworkers here in the Sacramento area because of their experience and the relationship that we have with AMR to continue to have that union company relationship to move forward to provide the service that they've been providing for your district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meisner. Appreciate it. Next, we have Tom Argel.
Good evening, President Jones, directors, chief. My name is Tom Argel. I'm the president and CEO of Alpha One Ambulance. And I was one of the proposers during this bid process, and I have a few comments that I'd like you to really consider about the process that took place. So the proposal itself, the RFP, the design of the RFP, the proposers were only allowed to submit 35 pages of the credentials and all the specifications required for such a high-performance EMS system. And in those 35 pages, we were told that we could not expand upon any further pages, so attachments could be included, but not part of the assessment of the RFP. And I think with a contract of this magnitude and this significance, I think that the RFP itself was flawed from that perspective, because even the scoring process, you couldn't possibly score the quality in 35 pages, especially if quality improvement and response times and credentialing, and there's a number of significant items that you can't possibly condense in 35 pages. So all of the proposers are of quality. There's no doubt about that. But I think that allowing this proposal to go forward, or this particular vote tonight to go forward, by not allowing a more fair approach to allowing providers who have submitted these bids to really expand upon their quality measures. I've spent my entire life in Sacramento County providing EMS ambulance service. And so I wasn't a selected provider. I wasn't number one. I wasn't number two. I happened to be the fourth position within the RFP. But the fact is that I've served this community all of my life. And I think not only do I have more to say about the services we provide, but I'm concerned in the fact that the amount of the RFP, the unit hour cost of $121 per unit hour for the type of system that it is, from the original proposal of $134, it's a $350,000 reduction per year. And what the Metro Fire District is expecting out of that provider to reduce that amount per unit hour per year, I am afraid that the following year that there's going to be a request to increase the unit hour cost. So I've seen this happen before in other systems where you start with the lowest bid, and then next year there is an opening because you can't sustain the growth of that contract. So somewhere in the middle, there's got to be an opening or reapproach to this RFP. Allow for more information. You can't do it in 35 pages. So as I close, please consider not voting for the RFP tonight. I'm sure AMR would be more than willing to extend their existing contract past June 30th to allow the other providers to really reassess this, giving more opportunities to submit their credentials and qualifications. Thank you. Any questions?
No, there won't be any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That concludes the speakers' sheets that I have. We'll reopen it back up to comments from fellow directors. Director Barnes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I sit here tonight, I'm absolutely thankful everybody came in and spoke on behalf. From a public safety background myself, I appreciate everything that's gone on tonight and everybody standing here and standing up for their organizations. We sit here, I'm not speaking for everybody on the dais here, but I say that we always talk we're a first-class organization. That's what we expect, first-class performance on everybody. However, I'm going to speak open on this. I have a hard time when I have an agency coming in here and pointing and saying things, because I got two spectrums, and I have to say this. I got a president of a union that says there's been multiple labor violations sent over, and I have now a president of an organization coming and saying that's not true. All right, I'm about trust and verify. Okay, so I have some reservation, all right, about this. We got to get it right, right? Cost doesn't overcome service to our community. However, when I look at what we have going on, we just, I have one organization, I feel in my mind sitting here tonight evaluating this, I got one organization staying above the line when it comes to comment about family. There were accusations about not being treated that way. And for me, I thank you all for your presentation. I respect everybody's opinion and the comments and the selection process, and I will say this. We have a process for a reason. I trust the leadership in this organization. This doesn't come easy. But I will say that there's some people that come in an organization when there's been a partnership for long periods of time without explanations on why things may need to increase. And then all of a sudden when there's a bid to go a different direction, because at one point in time we had to come online with AMR. So there was a new process, there was a growth, and there's been a great partnership in that, and it's been respectful. And no matter what we decide as a board moving forward, I would expect nothing but first-class performance from everybody that signs on with Metro Fire, because we are the leaders in the industry in what we do. But I appreciate everybody on the comments, the professionalism, when you all sat here and got to listen comments when things were heading your way, not in such a positive manner. And I appreciate the way you responded in that, everybody that came to the dais to talk to us tonight. So for that, I just want to thank everybody on the professionalism, because it could have easily gone a different direction tonight. So thank you.
Other comments from the directors? Okay, Director Gould?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I agree with my colleague. Everybody that's in this business is quality. Everybody that's in this business is quality. You don't get into this business to become a billionaire. You get in this business to help people. And everybody sitting in this room, whether you agree with any of this or not, everybody that's in this room is a quality individual. And they do quality work, whether they're on the front lines or their support staff, they all do quality work. My single concern right now is we heard testimony tonight that the RFP process identified a clear #1 ranking. That's what I heard. And then in that clear ranking, that individual group was not given an opportunity to then continue the negotiations to drive costs down. At least that's the testimony that I've heard tonight, and that is significantly problematic for me voting tonight. And again, my first motion went down because I would love to have additional time to investigate those kinds of things and figure that out. The answers to some of my questions were exceptional and were taken at face value. But when I hear that our ranking process put somebody at the top and then there was no additional conversation about that, I'm troubled as a citizen to make that happen tonight. And I'll tell you, I've been on this board a few days now. I'm pretty confident that, as was mentioned, if AMR needed to, they could extend it for 4 hours or 10 hours or 25, whatever. They've clearly proven that they can do that work, and I bet you there's other groups that would be willing to extend that as well. So I'm just not convinced that tonight is the absolute, if we don't do this, the sky is going to fall. I just don't see that. So I know my motion died. I'm a little hurt, but big boy, I'll get over it. But that's kind of where I'm at with my vote, is this idea that we went through the process, flawed or not flawed, we came out with a ranking, and then for some reason something happened where that individual ranking and that group wasn't given an opportunity to then come in and say, look, let's put the screws to you and figure out how we can save additional money. So anyway, thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. And thank all of you. It was pretty awesome to see you. I wish our democracy worked like this more frequently.
All right, thank you. Chief? And
I'd just like to follow up on a few things tonight, a few things that were said. Throughout this process, it was a very open and transparent in across the district. There was a comment that our EMS division was not involved. EMS was involved at the assistant chief level and also at a captain's level that was involved in the process. Our purchasing was involved. Both of the deputies did an outstanding job being very close to it and making sure that the #1 priority for us, and since I've gotten here and I've said it, and if you ask the members, is about service delivery. And what do we do for service delivery? In the process, we spent a lot of time talking about if it doesn't go well, and what do we do? What are the penalties? What is the time frame? What are our options? How do we move that if something came up that we didn't understand to be able to do that? In the timeline, we slowed things down, and we asked for extensions because we knew we wanted to make sure that we did it right. There was a comment that AP Triton picked this thing. And I'll let AP Triton take a minute here and speak on what their role was. But at the end of the day, it was my responsibility to bring this forward to you. And after that, it's my responsibility to make sure that the service that is delivered on the street every single day is as you said, the best of the best that's out there. I believe right now, I believe the reputation AMR has in this region with us is because they're running with us and they're running with our crews. And that will continue with this contract as we move forward. Just real quick, I don't want to speak for AP Triton, but I want them to speak on their behalf on what was said.
Chair, Board, Fire Chief Harms, again, Kurt Henke. I want to clarify some issues. First, we run a lot of RFPs on behalf of fire agencies across the state of California. We don't work for the private ambulance industry. We work for you. That's what we do. And what I will tell you is we don't recommend who gets selected. We draft the RFP. All RFPs have a limit on the amount of pages that you can have. This one did as well, but it had unlimited addendums, unlimited charts, and the ability to get the information across, and we had top-rate evaluators that evaluated the RFP. But we don't select. That's not our job. We don't make a recommendation, and in this case, we did not make a recommendation. And I want to make that very clear. The other thing that was alleged is that apparently me personally, an assistant chief, I actually retired as a fire chief, but that's okay. I'm saying that kind of in tongue-in-cheek. That somehow we had a prejudice against AMR. We ran the RFP process to select an ambulance provider for the third largest fire-based ambulance transport system. It displaced Metro, who was number 3, and put Metro at number 4 in Contra Costa County. And if anybody wants to take a guess at who the successful bidder was, it was AMR. Okay? We run these RFPs all the time. You lose your credibility one time by doing something that's not above board, and you're done. And I know a lot of you sitting up there have worked with me in the past, and credibility is pretty important to me. It's the number one issue. So at the end of the day, I have no doubt that the recommendation that the fire chief has made is a solid recommendation. All of these out here are high-quality people. All the organizations that submitted were high quality, but in the end, your selection was fair, it was impartial, it was exceedingly detailed. And with that, I just wanted to make those clarifications on what we had to do with the process. We simply designed the RFP, helped with the process in providing the RFP, but we did not select or recommend who won the RFP. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Henke. Right. We are at the point where we need to vote on action item number 6, the bid award for life support ambulance services, with the staff's recommendation. So, Chair will entertain a motion for the action item on the agenda. Okay, Chair will move said motion to accept staff recommendation. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it has been first and seconded. Are there any last comments from any directors before we vote? All right. Madam Chair, or Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Director Sailors.
I get to start it off, don't I?
See one.
Aye.
Gould.
No.
Orzali.
Aye, with some reservations about the process, but I support the initiative.
Sheets.
No.
Wood.
No.
Clark.
No.
Barnes.
Aye, with the same reservations as far as the process. However, I trust the process.
And Jones.
Aye.
Motion is tied. 4 votes in favor, 4 votes no.
Motion does not pass. All right, we will move to item number 7. Well, that will be under in closed session, correct, sir? Yes. All right. President's report. I would like to thank each and every person for participating in the previous discussion. That's what this room is for. So I appreciate everyone's participation. Moving to Fire Chief's report.
quick report tonight. We had one retirement on June 1st. Engineer Corrine Martintelli retired on June 1st. A couple of promotions. We had an SRP become a paramedic, Dylan Fader. New battalion chiefs, Michael Johnson, Joe Farica, and Ross Carrillo. And captains Vincent Purcell and Aaron Todd. That ends my report.
Okay, thank you. Do we have an operations report, Chief Bridge?
Yes, I will be brief real quick. We had a lot of fire activity over the last several weeks. Fire season, as everybody's aware, is here. Our one Type 3 engine that went out to the fire in Yolo has returned today at 12 noon. And prior to that, we had structure fire in Fair Oaks this morning that resulted in a 2-alarm fire, quickly reduced down to 1 alarm. No injuries on that, fortunately. Yesterday, we had two houses involved in Citrus Heights. We had a couple minor injuries, but everybody will make full recoveries there. One firefighter with a minor burn to his wrist. Fortunately, everything's good there. I could tell you that activity is picking up, and our members are doing a fantastic job, as they always do. So that'll conclude my report, unless you have any questions.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. Moving on to committee and delegate reports. Executive Committee, there is no report. Moving to Communications Center, JPA, AC Wagaman. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I do apologize. I had it circled.
Been here all night, he's waiting.
Is he here? All right, thank you. Chief Shannon, I'll ask you to return to your seat, and we'll go in order. We'll go in order of the agenda. I'm going to report out for Tyler. He's going to report out for Chief Wagner. Yes. However, we have 522 report, and you are number that I misspoke. Okay, welcome to the
Good evening, President Jones, Board of Directors, Chief Harms. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. And as Chief Harms mentioned, excited about the opportunity for our members. We had successful members in the Battalion Chiefs examination with Mike Johnson, Joe Farica, and Ross Carrillo promoting to Battalion Chief in 2 days. So they should be very proud, as well as Vince Purcell and Aaron Todd to Captain. So congratulations to them. I also wanted to acknowledge the committee that put on the RFP for the SCBAs. Chief House, Tyler Block, Mark DeZordo, Jason Watts, as well as safety specialists Sestito and Hunter. They put a lot of time and effort into that. Respiratory protection is paramount, especially with the cancer epidemic that's affecting the fire service, and we appreciate the board's support of keeping us protected at the highest level, so thank you for that. Lastly, I want to touch on the contract. We came to a tentative agreement a few weeks back. We brought it to the membership for ratification. The battalion chiefs ratified the ASP, and the rest of the line, we didn't secure enough votes to ratify the contract. However, moving forward, we are committed to the process. Local 522's negotiation team is looking forward to meeting with management's negotiation team and finding a reasonable contract moving forward. So unless you have any questions, appreciate the time.
Any questions for Joel? All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, we covered executive committee, so now it will be Chief Shannon for the Communications Center JPA report.
Good evening. Reporting out for Chief Wagaman. Last meet was June 11th. Action item, they approved amended retired annuitant interim executive director employment contract. That is a heck of a title.
Good job.
That is all for his report. Next meeting will be June 25th here at the district.
Okay, thank you. Yes, don't move. Item C, Fire Rescue and Training JPA, DC Shannon.
We will meet next week on the 20th. On the 20th, we also will have the strategic plan that I mentioned in the last board meeting at an off-site golf course. How lucky am I? And then we will have a meeting the afternoon of the 20th across the hall in the SESC. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Chief Shannon? All right. Announcing for Director Kelly, the Finance and Audit Committee, the next meeting is scheduled for June 27th, 5:30 p.m. in these chambers. Policy Committee. Director Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The committee met this afternoon at about 5:15, and we were given a great presentation on an update to the workplace harassment policy. We've been assured that it has all of the necessary elements in it, that it's now even more current than it's been in the past, and the training will continue at a very high level, and that the local reviewed it and signed off on it. We took a vote. It was unanimous to move it to the full board for consideration. So, Madam Chair, I just would like that be agendized in our next meeting.
Okay, I'm sure it will be. So noted, thank you. All right, we'll move to board member questions and comments, and we'll start all the way to my left for a bit of a change here.
Cutting our break. Thank you, Madam Chair. No, again, just to kind of comment on tonight, it's amazing to see the process when you got human emotions involved and everything. I'm a firm believer that our leadership would not present a company that would provide substandard service. So I do respect AMR as a public safety person myself. We've worked side by side. So I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight, the retirees, and as we move forward in this next fire season, right? Take care of your loved ones, take care of each other, look out for one another. It's important because it's going to become busy times in the next few months, and we're going to be called upon. So again, I thank everybody. I love everybody in this organization that's willing to put their life on the line for others, especially the ones that are at home holding down the home front. I call the most valuable players, the MVPs are the ones behind the scenes that keep it running. So thank you all for what you do. I'm going to steal Director Wood's thunder about the tropical affair that is coming up, because I got to it beforehand.
Don't do that.
So we hope to see everybody there. It is a great event, and we look forward to a check presentation from a nonprofit I'm a part of to help that organization go. So
What was the day again?
June 21st.
All right.
June 22. Sue, see, I'm going to be there a day early. That's how excited I am.
My ties.
You start drinking early.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Water, that is. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Director Clark.
Yes. As was mentioned before, this is a pretty emotional night. Listening to all the presentations, I also have confidence in our staff and the chief, but I had too many reservations to really vote affirmatively. I want to thank CFO Amanda for her presentation. It was excellent. Thank you for helping us understand the complexities of this budget. And I also want to thank the men and women of this organization for a fine job that they do day in and day out. It's really appreciated. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Director Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, like everyone else has said, everyone that's been a part of this process tonight we appreciate all the time and the energy that everyone's put into it. Last week, I had the chance to go see the Rosemont Community Association. Before the meeting, I was told what the issue would be, and that was everyone was concerned about the fireworks season and the upcoming fireworks. So I reached out to CRRD, and I appreciate Investigator Chris Rogers coming down to be my subject matter expert on that. They all enjoyed his presentation, his talk, and his information. So I thank him for making the time to come down. It's no secret I do a lot of volunteer work with the Burn Institute. Recently, on June 1st, actually, the Dos Coyotes on Sunrise had their one-year anniversary. And they invited the Burn Institute to come down and have a booth. And Mike over there, the owner at the Dos Coyotes, didn't just donate proceeds from the 3 hours we were there manning the booth, but he donated 20% of every sale that day to the Burn Institute for that whole day. So I thought he deserved a special thank you. Engine 31 showed up while we were there, and so they came and supported as well. And that was good. And lastly, this was my last chance to remind everybody about the tropical affair.
Give them the correct date.
And yeah, I'll give you all the correct date. It's the 22nd of June. It's an excellent opportunity to support an excellent organization that we hope we never have the need for their services. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, sir. Director Rosali.
Just very briefly, I want to thank everybody for the presentations this evening. This is a difficult issue and one that everyone feels passionate about. I have great respect for all the agencies that are involved, and I look forward to the ongoing discussion. Also, There was a meeting today of the Sac Metro Public Safety Foundation. We're looking to have a presentation for this board at the next board meeting about an initiative to acquire the heat sensor devices called TICs that we're seeking to purchase for each of the firefighters in the district. You'll hear more about that as we go along. But with that, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Director Gould?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, CFO Thomas, thank you very much for your presentation. It becomes clearer and clearer to me every time you present that our finances are in the condition that they are because of your exceptional leadership in that division. So please keep that up, because we're headed for some times where we have to have your exactness and your sharpness in order for us to make good decisions. And one of our primary responsibilities as elected officials is our fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayer. And you're a key component of that, so stick around. Second thing is, tonight we saw democracy at its finest. We don't necessarily have to like the outcome, but we do have to appreciate the process, because without a democracy, we got really nothing here. And so while we may be a little bit bent out of shape, some of us are not, we have to respect the process and the staff that brought that process forward and presented it to the elected officials. Thank you for that, because at the end of the day, that's a lot better than having some edict from a particular group and we don't have a choice. And so I appreciate it, and it's invigorating when we don't have 9-0. It's invigorating for not only us, I believe, but it's invigorating for our staff, because they get to know and see how we come at it. We're 9 unique individuals elected to represent unique places and people. And so it was just phenomenal to be here tonight. Probably one of the highlights of my fairly lengthy career at this dais, because we saw the passion and we saw exceptional people saying exceptional things. And so thank you for allowing me to be here and participate in that. Finally, and again, thanks to the staff, because they work tirelessly and a lot of hours that few people know about to make this work right. Finally, tonight we are going to go into closed session, and I want to wish a dear friend of mine best wishes in his career as his comes to a close too quickly and too shortly. And that's probably the biggest downer about being in this position, is to have to make those decisions on industrial disability. And I wish him and his family the best for all the decades and expertise that he's brought to this organization. He will be sorely missed after this evening. So thank you, men and women. Thank you, everyone here. I appreciate the invitation to be here.
Thank you. Director Sailors?
After that, I have nothing left to say. He said everything. So,
You have something?
that's it, I'm done, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Again, thank you to everyone, fellow board members, staff, and public for participating in our discussions tonight. We will be adjourning to closed session, and as is our wont, we will request nobody has to stay until we come back out of closed session. All right, thank you very much. Adjourn to closed. Oh my God. I really did. You should have just hit me. No, wait.
What just
hit
happened?
me, saying you didn't. You forgot.